Chapter 4379. This demon king by Qing was quite tactful. Seeing the three great sages teleporting over, Xiaohua was obviously at a disadvantage. Although he didn't know why the three great sages came, since they were here, he naturally had to use this opportunity to find a way out for himself. His words were quite sincere and didn't have any intention of threatening. Instead, he was begging for mercy, giving Xiaohua a way out. Hee hee. Peng Jun sneered. Bai Qing, why do you have to be so humble? Although Daoist Xiao is a human of the 9th grade, my great sage Hall's sage Peng is also of the 9th grade. In addition to sage Ni and sage Bei, it's already clear who will win and who will lose. Even if we fall now, there won't be any survivors among the hundreds of thousands of humans around Bai Qingyu. Isn't it better to let them die with us? Ni Quan looked at Peng Jun in a daze. He didn't know where Peng Jun got his confidence from. And he was also muttering in his heart. If it was just from the purpose of suppressing the little white dragon, he was in the greatest danger, because what he coveted was Xiaohua's power. He even knew that Shui Mingzi had already killed some human cultivators related to Xiaohua. And although Peng Jun and Bai Qing had interrogated the little white dragon the most, what they wanted was some information, and it did not involve Xiaohua's own safety. From his point of view, the one Xiaohua hated the most should be him. Therefore, he only pondered a little and said with a smile, Daoist Xiao, I advise you to stop here. We don't know your background and have offended you. Daoist Xiao's disciples attacking Bai Qingyu is actually a taboo of our thousand demons' sacred realm. The three great sages shouldn't have come for such a small matter like Bai Qingyu. The war between the human race and the demon race is a big matter. We will admit our mistake in front of the three great sages and ask the three great sages to consider and not report this matter to the great sage hall. Otherwise, not only will the lives of the hundreds of thousands of your disciples be in danger, even the human race of the hidden immortal continent might. This Ni Quan was the most cunning. He didn't mention his own covetousness. Instead, he expanded the scope of the matter and directly linked it to the war between the human race and the demon race. Although he didn't mention Xiaohua, every word was filled with a kind of threat. He was confident that in the face of three great sages, in the face of the risk of being killed, Xiaohua would definitely make his own choice. Unfortunately, contrary to the three monster kings' expectations, Xiaohua smiled coldly and ignored them. Instead, he stood there silently and looked at the three enormous vortexes of starlight that had already formed in the sky. These three vortexes were distributed high up in the sky above Bai Qingyu. They were about 1,000 miles apart from each other and surrounded Xiaohua's golden body in a triangular shape. Right in front of the several 100,000 Fortune Gate disciples' eyes, boom, boom, boom. Three consecutive thunderous booms sounded as the starlight pillar inside the vortex shone brightly. Along with the starlight pillar was a black and white luster. Then, three strands of consciousness that were not weaker than Xiaohua's rushed out from the starlight vortex, rushing out in all directions like a flash flood. Following the emergence of these strands of consciousness, one of the vortexes spewed out boundless golden light. This golden light landed in the sky and condensed into a several thousand zhang tall golden phantom. The phantom had a golden crown on its head, and when it spread its wings, boundless starlight rushed out from within. It was the outline of a golden-winged great Peng. The phantom only appeared for a few breaths, but countless golden spots appeared on the phantom again. As if adding the finishing touch, the phantom emitted a dazzling golden light. This golden light was so resplendent that even Xiaohua couldn't help but close his eyes. However, even with his eyes closed, the outline of the golden-winged great Peng was still imprinted in his mind. When Xiaohua opened his eyes again, he saw that the dazzling golden phantom had already turned into a living golden-winged great Peng. This golden-winged great Peng slightly spread its wings, and the golden light was like the rising sun, shining brightly on the earth. A kind of pressure that could make all living things crawl spread out from this dazzling light. Wherever the dazzling light passed, the lightning in the capital heaven star formation flickered and then disappeared. Tens of thousands of Fortune Gate's disciples fell from the sky. Not only that, but as the dazzling light flashed, the several thousand zhang tall demonic beast's body rapidly expanded. After countless pillars of starlight fell, It actually expanded to several hundred li, or even 1,000 li. A feeling that was as vast as the heavens came from this golden-winged great Peng's demonic beast body, and it made people yearn to look up to a tall mountain. This golden-winged great Peng was the #1 great sage in the Thousand Demons' sacred ground. At the same time that the golden-winged great Peng revealed itself, another vortex spewed out light blue strands of light. These strands of light were mixed with a thick gray color. After the strands of light surged out, they did not condense into a phantom like the golden light. Instead, they spread out in all directions. In particular, these strands of light crisscrossed, like a kind of silk net, covering several hundred li of space in a few breaths' time. When the golden-winged great Peng's demonic beast body appeared, the net also emitted a soft gray halo. This halo floated out from the strands of light like fish scales, and the entire space trembled and distorted under this halo. Boom, boom, boom. Tens of millions of tiny pillars of starlight and moonlight fell from the sky, accurately hitting each of the halos of light. Then, a faint blue light suddenly surged out from within the halos of light, and a huge flying feather void beast was revealed, turning into tens of thousands of fragments. When the faint blue light dimmed, the flying feather void beast had completely recovered. A vast aura that was not weaker than the golden-winged great Peng's demonic beast body also emerged from its demonic beast body, and swept towards the human cultivators in another direction. This flying feather void beast was the third great sage of the Thousand Demons' holy land. A 5-colored halo surged out from the last vortex. Needless to say, this was the 5-colored sea god Seashell, the fourth great sage of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. However, the appearance of the 5-colored sea god Seashell was different. The 5-colored halo rushed out from the vortex like a stream of light and quickly landed on a small dot in the sky. When all the halos gathered, the space where the small dot was located began to tremble violently. Indescribable fluctuations rushed out in all directions like a windmill. Similarly, the surrounding several hundred li of this light dot was filled with pillars of starlight and moonlight. When the golden-winged great Peng's golden light appeared, the tens of thousands of small dots began to rotate like a kaleidoscope. Countless halos of light flooded out from the 5-colored light, illuminating the surrounding several hundred li. When the halos of light turned into a huge 5-colored wheel of light, the patterns of a seashell appeared between the light and shadow. A similarly vast aura surged out, and the 5-colored halo withdrew into the seashell, revealing the demonic beast body of the 5-colored sea god Seashell. There were a total of 6 great sages in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Today, half of the great sages were gathered in by Qingyu. This was something that had never happened in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm before. There was a slight difference in the order in which the 3 great sages appeared, but other than Xiaohua, the hundreds of thousands of Fortune Gate disciples only saw a flash of light before the 3 great sages' figures appeared. Needless to say, the aura of the great sages of the demonic beast race had already shaken their bodies. Nearly 70% of the disciples had already fallen from the sky. The moment the golden-winged great Peng appeared, a proud golden light flashed in his eyes. He looked at the 2 trembling lightning ships in the sky and said, "Did this great sage see wrongly? There are actually humans invading my demonic beast race's sacred realm." And they even flew the battleships to the center of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm? Not only did they invade my demonic beast race's sacred realm, but they also killed my Bai Qingyu's descendants. The 5-colored sea god Seashell's words were calm, but his tone was filled with anger. This great sage really doesn't know who gave you humans such courage. Was it Immortal Emperor Go Qin or Mahavrakana? Interesting. The flying feather void beast laughed loudly. This great sage has never seen so many high-level Daoist cultivators before. Even the #1 expert of the Daoist gate, the Grand Mist Ancestor, didn't have so many disciples, right? It's this Xiao. Xiaohua sneered in his heart when he saw that the 3 great sages were ignoring him. The first thing they did was to talk about the 200,000 Fortune Gate disciples attacking Bai Qingyu. He knew the 3 great sages' intentions. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the 5-colored sea god Seashell and said, These are my Fortune Gate disciples. They obeyed my orders and came to massacre Bai Qingyu. What about it? Do you have a problem with that? Hee hee. The five-colored sea god seashell chuckled. As expected of a proud human cultivator, this great sage seems to have seen the grand mist ancestor again. What's your name? This one is Xiaohua. Xiaohua pondered for a moment before replying in a neither arrogant nor servile manner. He then looked at the golden-winged great Peng and cupped his fists. This Xiao only represents myself, not the human race. This time, I came to Bai Qingyu to deal with her. I have no intention of troubling the thousand beast sacred ground. Although Xiaohua was furious, he was also furious. He originally wanted to hide behind the scenes to find out the truth, but when he saw little white dragon being suppressed and a few of his friends in a desperate situation, he couldn't take it anymore and revealed his true appearance. Once he revealed his true appearance, the truth seemed to stop at what he knew before. Now that the three great sages had appeared, it would be even harder to find the real culprit behind the scenes. However, when he thought about it, little white dragon's strength was only at the 5th level, and it was unlikely that the person who wanted to deal with him would be stronger than a beast king. Therefore, Xiaohua patiently explained. After all, he had massacred the entire Bai Qingyu, and Feng Wu had already become a 7 stars great sage. She might even enter the great sage hall in the future. Xiaohua didn't want to find trouble for Feng Wu. Unfortunately, Xiaohua's neither arrogant nor servile attitude was the human race's unique tolerance. In the eyes of the demon race, he was weak. The flying feather void beast glanced at Ni Quan, who was imprisoned by Xiaohua, and didn't help him. He only smiled and said, "Since you're targeting Bai Qingyu, why did you imprison my beast king? You led more than 200,000 humans to the 1,000 beast sacred ground. Isn't that trespassing on my beast race?" The five-colored sea god seashell was even more furious. "You're a 9th level Mahayana cultivator, how can you bully the weak? Moreover, with your cultivation, how can my beast king offend you? Could it be that you've long planned to invade my 1,000 beast sacred ground and took this opportunity to come here?" Chapter 4380. The golden-winged great Peng snorted coldly as it spread its glowing golden wings. Waves of ferocious flames covered the sky as it charged towards the tens of thousands of Fortune Gate's disciples. The golden-winged great Peng continued, "No matter what the reason is, anyone who dares to invade my 1,000 demons' sacred territory and injure my disciples must be killed." Xiaohua harumphed coldly. He didn't do anything, but the lightning around his golden body suddenly shot out like hundreds of dragons, protecting the tens of thousands of Fortune Gate disciples. Not only did the lightning strike extinguish the ferocious flames, but it also condensed into several dozen zhang-wide lightning balls in the air, spinning inexplicably. "Ha, you really do have some tricks up your sleeve. No wonder you dare to show off in my 1,000 beast sacred realm." The golden-winged great Peng chortled as the space within a radius of 1,000 kilometers began to crack. "Calm down, Holy Peng," the five-colored sea god seashell said in an indifferent voice. "I'd like to ask, this human grand ascension stage being what caused him to bully the weak and kill all of my Biqing and Yuer with his hundreds of thousands of disciples? His 200,000 disciples won't be able to escape anyway, and if we force our way in, Immortal Emperor Go Chen and Great Solar will accuse us of bullying him with numbers." "What bullshit nonsense!" the flying feather void beast retorted coldly. "Humans only know how to sow discord and invert yin and yang. What's there to listen to? Holy Bay, if this bloodbath were to take place on my ancient Bell Mountain, how could I say anything to him?" Xiaohua was already prepared to fight, but his brows furrowed upon hearing the five-colored sea god seashell's words. He pondered for a moment before releasing the 3 demon monarchs, and he said, "Your backers are here, so why don't you tell me what they're talking about? I won't wrong a demon, and I won't let a demon go either. Holy Bay, you have to uphold justice for me." As soon as Bai Qingyu regained her freedom, she immediately flew toward the five-colored sea god seashell as she continued, "This human grand ascension stage cultivator is bullying the weak, and he's accusing me of suppressing him. I'm only a puny demon monarch. How could I dare to oppose a human grand ascension stage cultivator? Boys of My Pitiful by Qingyu died tragically in the hands of his hundreds of thousands of disciples. Damn it! The five-colored sea god shell said angrily, I asked you to tell me the reason. Why are you saying so many useless things? Yes, I was wrong. Bai Qing faltered slightly upon hearing this before hurriedly replying, I encountered a dragon around 100 years ago, and we had some enmity between us, so I imprisoned him. Who would have thought that this dragon would look exactly like this grand ascension stage being of the human race? On top of that, this dragon called himself Xiaohua of the human race. How would this lowly one know who he is? I only knew that he had offended me by Qingyu, which was why I suppressed him. I didn't care about what he said at all. But who would have thought that 100 years later, when I was holding a banquet in Bai Qingyu and invited the people of Sky-Concealing Ridge and Ancient Bell Mountain to gather, this grand ascension stage human came to my doorstep. Not only did he rescue that dragon, he even used it as leverage to force me to summon that dragon. Otherwise, you will wash my banquet with blood. Think about it, Bei Sheng. How could this lowly one be a match for this grand ascension stage human? He rescued that dragon without anyone noticing, so where did this lowly one come from? Isn't this? Bai Qing pointed around with a tentacle as she spoke. Not only did this grand ascension stage human kill my boy, he also killed all of my friends from Sky-Concealing Ridge and Ancient Bell Mountain. This lowly one and these two demon monarchs were almost killed by him as well. Bei Sheng and I Sheng, Peng Sheng, the three of you have to uphold justice for this lowly one. I, Bai Qingyu, no longer exist in the Thousand Demons sacred realm. This is all the doing of the human race. Bai Qing's words were 70% true and 30% false, and she had slightly reversed the cause and effect of this matter. However, it was these changes that had pushed all of the blame onto Xiaohua and the human race. In the end, it was even suspected that she had instigated a war between the human race and the demon race. Damn it! The golden-winged great Peng roared 3 times, and his voice shook the surroundings. Amidst the thunderous roar, Xiaohua's indifferent voice rang out, Don't the three of you want to hear what I have to say? The human race has always been good with words. They can even bring the dead back to life. The flying feather void beast chuckled. This holy beast still believes in the words of the demon race. Let me explain. Before Xiaohua could say anything, Ao Sheng jumped out from the Fortune Gate's disciples and shouted. The 3 great sages had already seen Ao Sheng, and they couldn't help but frown when they saw him. The flying feather void beast calmly asked, Ao Sheng, are you representing the Dragon Island or yourself? Of course I'm representing myself. Ao Sheng naturally knew what the flying feather void beast was implying, and he said, However, Daoist Xiao is the dragon master of my Dragon Island, and I'm sure the Great Holy Hall has already received a message from my Dragon Island. Bai Qingyu knew that Daoist Xiao was the dragon master of my Dragon Island, but she still suppressed a dragon who looked exactly like Daoist Xiao. Where is the dignity of my Dragon Island? I've always wanted to ask the Beast King Bai Qingyu, do you even have my Dragon Island in your eyes? You don't represent the Dragon Island, and you don't have the right to ask. The 5-colored sea god Seashell said indifferently, However, for the sake of the Dragon Island, you can ask. At this point, there's no need to ask anymore. Even though Ao Sheng was facing a great sage of the demon race, and he could barely breathe under the pressure of a great sage, he still had his pride. He calmly replied, Because I already know the truth. Since Ai Sheng doesn't believe in the human race, I'll explain it to the 3 great sages. Ao Sheng then explained everything he had learned from Ao Zhantian, as well as how Ao Zhantian had interrogated Shui Mingzi. He then looked at the 3 great sages with a smile and said, 3 great sages, did I make myself clear? Is there anything else you want to ask? Is that so? The 5-colored sea god Seashell looked coldly at Bai Qing and asked. All right, Bei Sheng, I didn't receive any messages from the Dragon Island, so I naturally didn't know that this grand ascension stage human was the dragon master of the dragon race. A few days ago, a dragon envoy from the Dragon Island came to pass on the Dragon Palace's message. At the time, I was completely baffled, and I hurriedly asked the dragon envoy to identify it. In the end, the dragon envoy said that the dragon I was suppressing wasn't a dragon master, and only then did I heave a sigh of relief. Bai Qing replied with a serious expression. As for what the dragon envoy said, some of it is true. For example, I did indeed capture that dragon master. As for the rest, it's all just his wild guesses. How could I possibly risk offending the Dragon Island and provoking a rift between the Dragon Island and the Great Sage Hall? Of course, if this Grand Ascension stage human feels that I've offended him, I'm willing to apologize to him. As he spoke, Bai Qing manifested a 5-colored soul from within the seashell. The soul took the form of a human and bowed toward Xiaohua. And I Xing, this dragon master is exaggerating. Seeing that Xiaohua was ignoring Bai Qing, and I Quan hurriedly said, I don't know what he's talking about. I was only invited by Bai Qing to attend the banquet. If what he said was not his guess, then it was the despicable things that this lowly one's descendant of the human race did. This is also a matter of the human race. It has nothing to do with my ancient Bell Mountain or the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Where's your human descendant? The golden-winged Great Pring asked. Well. And I Quan smiled bitterly. Peng Sage, I have countless human descendants. Who knows where the human descendant he's talking about is? Ao Xing, there's no proof. Where's that human? Peng Sage looked at Ao Xing. I've already killed him. Ao Xing replied indifferently. Silencing him. And I Xing smiled. This is a common method used by the human race. I'm not a human. Ao Xing was furious. I'm a dragon master. You dare to call yourself in front of this sage? Peng Sage was furious. Even Ao Jia wouldn't dare, right? As he spoke, a golden light flashed in front of Ao Xing. Then, a golden claw that was hundreds of feet long grabbed at Ao Xing's back. Although it was just a shadow, the space around Ao Xing was completely sealed. Ao Xing didn't even have the chance to struggle. It was at this moment that the lightning in front of the golden light rumbled. A hand made of lightning appeared and crushed the shackles. Then, it grabbed Ao Xing and lifted him up into the air, dodging the golden claw. Damn it! The golden-winged Great Pring roared again. Human, it seems like you don't want to return to the hidden immortal continent. Xiaohua. At this moment, the 5-colored seashell also said coldly, My clan's demon monarch Bai Qingyu has already apologized to you. Isn't it time to settle the matter of you killing my Bai Qingyu boy? When Xiaohua heard the 3 great sages singing the same tune, he understood that the 3 great sages would definitely side with him. Moreover, as a Mahayana realm cultivator of the human clan, he was a 9th-grade origin energy realm cultivator. This was a huge threat in the eyes of the demon clan. Perhaps the 3 great sages had come here today mainly because of him. They didn't care about Bai Qingyu's matter at all. Their goal was to keep him in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Of course, at the very least, they wanted his strength to drop by a realm. Thinking of this, Xiaohua looked up to the sky and laughed. There's a saying in the human clan, a powerful dragon can't suppress a snake in its old haunts. Originally, I wanted to give you a proper explanation. Killing Bai Qingyu's demon clan can be considered as venting the anger in my chest. Since you're not afraid of making a big deal out of it, I'll accompany you to the end. It's just 3 great sages of the demon clan. I really don't care about them. While speaking, Xiaohua suddenly waved his right hand, and the universe in the sleeve technique appeared, instantly enveloping Ni Quan, Bai Qing, and Peng Jun in the air. The 3 great sages were shocked. They didn't expect Xiaohua to suddenly make a move in front of them. Just as they were about to rebuke him, they heard Xiaohua shout, Fortune Gate disciples, send troops to the ancient Bell Mountain and Heaven-concealing Ridge. First, flatten the ancient Bell Mountain, then destroy Heaven-concealing Ridge. P.S. Thank you for the tip in the WeChat group. Although I didn't receive it, I've received your kind intentions. I remember when Buddha Bodhi attained enlightenment, he said to the heavenly demon Hualu, Namo Methriya Buddha, disciple is praying to Buddha here. I implore Buddha to raise his hand. If it's the Buddha kingdom, it should be returned to the Buddha kingdom. If it's the Buddha kingdom, it should be returned to the heavenly demon. Perhaps Zhenjian's kind intentions are what the 3rd-place candidate needs the most. I thank you for this. Now that I think about it, sometimes human nature can't be tested. Also, everyone worked hard to guess the questions last night. I thank you for this chapter. Of course, there are also many fellow Daoists who supported me, such as habit and nature. Chapter 4381. Yes, flatten the ancient Bell Mountain and annihilate the sky-concealing ridge. The group of Fortune Gate disciples roared. Although their voices were weak, their momentum was unstoppable. Kill! The flying feather void beast was enraged. Without waiting for the golden-winged Great Peng to say anything, it flapped its wings. In the next second, 1,000 li of space around Xiaohua was torn apart, and a spatial storm swept toward Xiaohua. At the same time, it also attacked the Fortune Gate disciples nearby. If others don't bully me, I won't bully others. If others bully me, I will exterminate them. Xiaohua smiled faintly and the Kunlun mirror appeared in his hand. A pillar of light shot into the sky as Wen Chu flew over. As his true energy turned into pearls that filled the sky, the spatial cracks within 1,000 li were instantly mended. A group of Fortune Gate disciples flew away from the Rong Gate. You are... The flying feather void beast was shocked when it saw Wen Chu fly out. Which Immortal Palace's literary star are you? This Wen Chu is not a literary star, and this immortal realm is not an immortal palace. Wen Chu replied indifferently, this little one is Wen Chu. I like to help when I see injustice, and I hate people who distort right and wrong. Since the great sage of the Great Sage Hall is slandering fellow Daoist Shao, then this little one has no choice but to help. This little one will fight with you. As he spoke, a boundless pillar of noble qi descended from the sky. Wen Chu had activated his subbody, and it also grew to several tens of thousands of feet tall. He waved his right hand in the air, and a ray of sword light descended like a river towards the flying feather void beast. Damn it! When did so many 9th grade origin qi masters appear in the human race? The flying feather void beast sensed the sharpness of the sword light and cursed. It flapped its wings and disappeared into the void, while its sharp claws slapped the air. Rumble! The space rumbled like the sea, and layers of spatial cracks formed into waves of qi that rushed towards Wen Chu. Pa pa pa! The spatial cracks like a snowstorm drowned the sword light, and the entire sky was filled with the sound of spatial explosions. When the sword light destroyed the spatial cracks, it also destroyed itself. Every time the sword light and spatial crack was destroyed, it would create waves of qi that covered the sky and earth, surging everywhere within 1,000 li. What a powerful aura! Wen Chu narrowed his eyes and said coldly, you are indeed a great sage of the demon clan. Even though the space crack had been destroyed, the sword light was still surging towards him. However, so what if he's a great saint? My heart is magnanimous, and I use my will to communicate with the heavens and earth. My sword is traceless, and I use justice to destroy evil. Wen Chu's voice was like the hum of a sword. He waved the sword in his hand 3 times, and countless pillars of energy fell from the void. Along with the sword energy, they sealed the space within hundreds of miles. As the sword energy soared into the sky, Jia Ming and Wen Chu's poems and essays released a righteous song that shook the heavens and earth. This sword of justice carried the boundless righteousness of literature as it pounced towards the flying feather void beast. Kachacha, kachacha! The roaring space qi exploded and collided with the sword hair seal. At the same time, the space cracks were torn apart, and the poem condensed by the inscription armor was also hit by the space force. It turned into a stroke and disappeared in the air. You are indeed a human Confucian cultivator. This is the first time this saint has seen such loyalty. The flying feather void beast's voice rang out in the void, and the arrogance in its voice had lessened by 30%. Clearly, this trial strike had allowed it to see that Wen Chu's strength was on par with its. When Wen Chu heard the flying feather void beast's voice, he clenched his right hand into a fist and punched the void without hesitation. This fist wasn't simple at all. Where the fist landed, the fragile space was torn apart once more. Countless pillars of vast energy rushed into the fist through the cracks. It was only a distance of 100 miles, so the fist arrived in a flash. In the blink of an eye, the fist had transformed from 100 feet in size to a meteor-like object. Boom! With a loud bang, the space dozens of miles in size was shattered by Wenchu's punch. As the space cracks spread, circles of space collapsed, and Wenchu's fist punched deeply into the void. Ha! The flying feather void beast's voice rang out again behind Wenchu. Its laughter was full of mockery. Human, who do you think you are facing? How can this kind of attack be a match for this saint? Wenchu smiled and withdrew his fist. He glanced around with bright eyes. He knew that this flying feather void beast was proficient in spatial arts. Although it didn't release its domain, it could move freely in this space. If Wenchu didn't have any other means, he could only use his domain to suck it in. Only then would he have a way to deal with it. But the other party was a great saint of the demon race. In terms of strength, it was only stronger than him, and it was also proficient in spatial magic. It was unlikely that he could suck it into his space. He could only think of other ways. Wenchu thought for a moment and opened his mouth to recite, Zhao Ke's beard tassels, Wu Go's frost and snow. Silver saddle on white horse, valiant as a meteor. As the poem was recited, countless pillars of ore and qi fell from the inscriptions on the armor. Then, the figure of a knight on a white horse appeared in the sky. The white horse galloped, and the sound of the horse's hooves was very clear in the sky. Oh my God, you really scared this saint? The flying feather void beast was about to burst out laughing in the void. He shouted, You actually used such a method to fight this saint? Do you think this is a game for you humans? As he spoke, the nearby space rippled again. Space bubbles big enough to collapse mountains rushed out of the void and rushed toward the white horse. Ta-da! The sound of the white horse's hooves was still crisp, and it was still calm. No matter how the bubbles burst, the saint easily steered the white horse to avoid them. Although the air waves blew the saint's clothes askew, the saint's eyes were as tenacious as Wenchu's. The flying feather void beast suddenly had a bad feeling. Although the knight on the white horse was just charging straight ahead, he always felt that the knight on the white horse's eyes were locked on him. A kind of fear that he had never faced before gradually approached his heart. Damn it! The flying feather void beast muttered in a low voice. As its feathers swayed, a spatial storm dozens of miles away was set off, and it fiercely rushed toward the saint. At this point, the flying feather void beast no longer dared to treat the saint as a battle puppet. Killing one in 10 steps, leaving no trace for 1,000 miles. When the deed is done, leave with a flick of your sleeves, hide your identity and reputation. Wenchu saw the flying feather void beast attack, and as he chanted, the flying sword in his hand slashed down again. The sword light was different from before. The sword light illuminated the night sky, and it split into countless sword hairs, each one sharp and unshakable. When the sword hairs fell on the spatial storm, all of the spatial cracks were split in half. There was no exception. What surprised the flying feather void beast the most was that the sword hairs, which were originally split up, suddenly flew up again after the spatial storm was suppressed, and suddenly pierced into the void. The flying feather void beast was a little stunned. What's going on? But a moment later, the flying feather void beast came to its senses and laughed loudly. Its laughter echoed in the air, and it was impossible to find its specific location. The human race is really cunning. I was just trying to lure this saint into a trap, but you actually went so far. Ouch. Just when the flying feather void beast thought that it had seen through Wenchu's trick, the knight on the white horse suddenly turned around and pulled out a bright sword from his back. He then slashed down at a place below him. The flying feather void beast was shocked. Wasn't the place where he was hiding? Just as the flying feather void beast was shocked, Wenchu raised his hand and slapped the top of his head. Boom! A stream of Xiantian true qi spewed out, and the heaven and earth pagoda appeared in the clouds. The heaven and earth pagoda appeared in the sky, and immediately emitted a bright brilliance. This brilliance scattered all over the space where the flying feather void beast was hiding. Along with this brilliance, Countless streams of noble qi fell and quickly condensed in the space within 1,000 miles. An unparalleled wave of true qi came from the heaven and earth pagoda, and at the top of the space, a blue sea-like sky was born, completely covering the space. Below the space, a wasteland like earth was also born, echoing the sky and confining the entire space. When this confinement was born, a wave of ripples swept down from the sky to the ground, and the flying feather void beast's figure was revealed behind this ripple. Until now, the flying feather void beast's face was still full of disbelief. He really couldn't believe that Wen Chu could actually identify his tracks with a saint on a white horse. "Eat my sword." Wen Chu didn't give the flying feather void beast too much time. As soon as his figure appeared, he immediately released the flying sword that had been accumulating power for a long time. Boom! The flying sword fell like a meteor, dragging a dazzling brilliance behind it as it pierced towards the flying feather void beast. The huge roar was deafening even under the suppression of the heaven and earth pagoda. The flying feather ni space beast snorted coldly. It twisted its body, and the tail on its back smashed through the air. The huge shadow was like a mountain range. Even the heaven and earth pagoda above the flying feather ni space beast's head trembled slightly when the shadow moved. Clang! The flying sword hit the flying feather void beast's tail, and tens of thousands of sparks flew. At the same time that Wen Chu's flying sword was sent flying, more than 10 cracks appeared on the flying feather void beast's tail. There was still a lot of sword qi between these cracks, which was madly worshipping the demon runes around the flying feather void beast, wanting to rush into its body. Seeing that the flying sword was ineffective, Wen Chu's figure flashed, and he turned into a stream of light and rushed up. As he waved his fists, the noble qi pillar fell again, and along with Wen Chu's fist, rushed towards the flying feather void beast. "Hi human, you're too bold. You actually dare to compete with a great saint of the demon race?" The flying feather void beast laughed loudly, spread its wings, and also waved its front claws to meet Wen Chu. Although the nearby space was sealed by the heaven and earth pagoda, a star mark appeared on the flying feather void beast's chest. Endless power of the stars and moon came from that star mark and rushed towards Wen Chu, its power no less than Wen Chu's. Chapter 4382. Boom Boom Boom. Wen Chu and the flying feather void beast clashed in close combat. Shockwaves that could destroy a mountain peak surged out one after another, tearing apart the space within several thousand miles. However, the shattered space quickly recovered under the suppression of the heaven and earth pagoda. Putting aside the fact that Wen Chu was fighting the flying feather void beast, the two 9th grade essence power great masters were evenly matched. Just the fact that as Wen Chu flew out, the golden-winged great rock's sharp eyes had already clearly seen the true form of Xiaohua's transcendent artifact. He sneered, "Kunlun mirror? No wonder you could bring several 100,000 disciples to Bai Qingyu. So you have this treasure." After saying that, the golden-winged great Peng's gaze turned towards the 5-colored sea god seashell. Although they were several hundred miles apart, the 5-colored sea god seashell could clearly see the golden-winged great Peng's gaze. 9th grade cultivators of the 3 continents were the foundation of the confrontation between the various forces. Just like how the Fortune Gate's 200,000 nascent Soul Realm disciples had attacked Bai Qingyu. Although Bai Qingyu's demonic beast clan was completely annihilated, as long as the 5-colored sea god seashell appeared, these 200,000 nascent Soul Realm disciples were nothing but dust. Only Xiaohua, who was a 9th grade cultivator, was a match for the 5-colored sea god seashell. The sudden appearance of a grand ascension stage cultivator like Xiaohua had already shocked the golden-winged great Peng. Now, Xiaohua's Kunlun mirror actually flew out of the 5-colored sea god seashell. In an instant, the balance between the human and demonic beast clans was broken. Although the 2 great sages of the demonic beast clans didn't take Bai Qingyu's matter seriously, the matter between the human and demonic beast clans didn't allow them to have other thoughts. They only had killing intent in their hearts. Almost without hesitation, the 5-colored sea god seashell sneered, "Cunning human, hurry up and release my clan's juniors, or don't blame this great sage for being impolite." "Xiaohua, how did my clan's juniors offend you? How dare you capture them in front of this great sage? Hurry up and release them, or don't blame this great sage for taking action. The golden-winged Great Peng also scolded. Xiaohua had ordered more than 200,000 Fortune Gate disciples to flatten the sky-concealing ridge and ancient Bell Mountain, and the only taboo was the 3 demonic beast kings. How could he release them? When he heard the 2 great sages' words, he laughed loudly. When did the demonic beast clan learn how to hide? Don't you just want to join forces to kill this Xiao? Why are you saying so many sanctimonious things? Kill. The 5-colored sea god seashell roared furiously. 5 colors blossomed around its body like fireworks, and the brilliance that covered 1,000 miles rushed toward Xiaohua. Boom! Xiaohua pretended to shake the Kunlun mirror, and another pillar of light shot up into the sky. A figure flashing with green light flew out with an emerald soul armament in his hand. It was Daoist Wu. Daoist, which landed in midair, and his soul strands flickered inexplicably. Countless ghost-like wails and wolf-like howls came from the void. As the sound became louder and louder, Daoist Witch's body also expanded by 1,000 feet. In the end, he was hundreds of miles in size like a 5-colored seashell. The 5-colored sea god seashell said, "You," 3 times in a row, but in the end, it couldn't reveal Daoist Witch's origin. Because even with the 5-colored sea god seashell's great sage ability, it couldn't tell whether Daoist Witch was a human or a demonic beast. Daoist Witch's eyes were dark green, and his face was also formed by soul strands. The 5-colored sea god seashell could only see boundless primordial strange scenes on his face, and couldn't see his true appearance at all. Daoist Witch cupped his hands and said, "I am a shaman." See. Hearing the word shaman, not only the 5-colored sea god seashell, but even the golden-winged Great Peng sucked in a breath of cold air. An ancient memory and the ancient records of the great sage Hall rushed into their minds. However, in just a moment, the 5-colored halo around the 5-colored sea god seashell calmed down, and it said coldly, "You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. How dare you call yourself a shaman? Today, I'll teach you a lesson." Daoist Witch was so angry that he laughed. He waved the subbrush in his hand, and in his laughter, countless green seal characters surged out and turned into 3 corpses in thunder that roared within 1,000 miles. He said, "You're just a great sage of the demon clan, and you haven't even taken off your shell. How dare you boast so shamelessly? I was born in heaven and earth, and I obtained Tao from heaven and earth. I'm a shaman. How can you not know this? You don't even have Dharma eyes. How can you see eyes' origin?" Damn it. The 5-colored sea god seashell had always been proud of its monster body. It had never heard someone mocking it like this before. With a furious roar, the unbelievably huge seashell spread out in the sky, covering the sun and moon. The 5-colored halo even shrouded everything within 1,000 miles. Without giving Daoist Witch any chance to struggle, the seashell immediately grabbed him and dragged him into its 5-colored domain. Within the 5-colored domain, all the essence of heaven and earth was imprisoned. All the spiritual power and true chi that belonged to the 5 elements were subdued. Apart from the faint halo that still gave off a dreamlike grandeur, Daoist Witch's voice sounded erratic. Daoist Witch had a faint smile on his face as he watched the 5-colored light fill his body. The light flashed with inexplicable patterns. Then he opened his mouth and hundreds of green seal characters flew out. Once the green seal characters flew out, they immediately screamed. The sound was distorted in the domain, but the power of gods and ghosts completely ignored the 5-colored domain. The green seal characters quickly combined and evolved in the domain until they turned into a huge green seal character. The moment the green seal character appeared, the entire 5-colored domain began to shake violently. Streaks of dark green lightning appeared strangely and spread in all directions. The extreme dark green lightning was even brighter than the 5 colors of the domain. The extreme shaking was even more violent than normal lightning. Wherever the lightning went, the 5-colored domain's light was wiped out and the space's imprisonment collapsed. Strands of essence of heaven and earth slowly entered the domain. Damn it, how could this be? In the 5-colored sky, The voice of the five-colored sea god shell was like that of a god, echoing everywhere within 1,000 miles. Then, in the places where the lightning hadn't reached yet, all the five-colored illusions appeared. They were waves, mountains, members of the Sea Clan, and even the Sea Clan. These illusions made all kinds of noises and rushed towards the lightning from all directions. Rumble. The entire domain began to shake and layers of bubble-like holes spread in all directions. Wherever the holes went, the five-colored lights and the lightning were all sucked in and annihilated. Ha! Daoist, which looked up and laughed. He opened his mouth and spat out hundreds of green seal characters. Waves of mysterious sounds rang out and more three corpses in thunder appeared out of thin air. Whoosh! Seeing that Daoist witch's three corpses in thunder wasn't part of the five elements and that his five-colored halo couldn't destroy it, the five-colored sea god Bei Tong also sneered. However, he saw a spike protruding from Daoist witch's back and stabbing towards Daoist witch's back without any sound. However, when the spike was 10 feet away from Daoist witch, his body suddenly shook and his back turned into his chest. Daoist witch raised his hand and the subbrush touched the tip of the spike. Whoosh! It seemed like water, like flowers blooming, or even like the exuberance of spring. A tiny green dot came out of the spike. Although the dot was tiny, it was as majestic as a world. In the five-colored sea god seashell's domain, the almost omnipotent spike couldn't move it. The spike made a roaring sound and couldn't move an inch forward no matter what. The green color even started to spread again and corrode the depths of the spike. The spike had no choice but to use its five-colored light to fight against it. Damn it, I don't believe it. Within this saint's domain, this saint can't do anything to you. The five-colored sea god shell seemed to have never been defeated like this before. It roared angrily and no longer cared about the realm that was destroyed by the three corpses' dark thunder at the edge of the space. Instead, tens of millions of spikes appeared around Daoist witch. These spikes were of different sizes and length. Each spike carried a five-colored halo and the will of the five-colored sea god shell. They all pierced towards Daoist witch's Dharmakaya. Green light flashed in Daoist witch's eyes and he saw the tens of millions of spikes. The tip of each spike had the hideous smile of the five-colored sea god seashell. Each spike was a clone of the five-colored sea god seashell. Daoist witch knew that if he was stabbed by the spike, his body would be destroyed by the five-colored light and his will would be controlled by the will of the five-colored sea god seashell. However, the green light in Daoist witch's eyes flashed with a hint of mockery. He really wanted to know how the five-colored Neptune shell would feel if it found out that he was just a clone of Xiaohua when it rushed into his mind. However, this was merely a thought in Daoist witch's mind. Daoist witch was different from when he left the three continents. The essence of his physical body was sufficient and was even 100 times stronger than ordinary cultivators. He had become an independent individual. He couldn't take a huge risk and take an unconventional approach. After all, he had many methods to deal with the great saint of the demon race. Daoist witch closed his eyes slightly. Boom! Green seal scripts appeared on the surface of his body and spun. They left his body and condensed into a huge light shadow a few miles to the left of Daoist witch. This light shadow wasn't a magic array or a human. It was the image of God Shibai with a human head and a beast's body and two green snakes on his ears. This light shadow rippled slightly on the surface of Daoist witch's body and then retracted. As the light shadow fell on the surface of Daoist witch's body, Daoist witch's human form transformed into God Shibai. At this moment, tens of millions of spikes had already landed on Daoist witch's body. What puzzled the five-colored sea god seashell was that Daoist witch didn't have any way to defend himself. He just let the spikes get close to him. A strange feeling suddenly arose in the five-colored sea god seashell's heart. Chapter 4383. However, as soon as the spikes pierced into Shibai's body, Daoist witch let out a deep roar. The roar seemed to come from the abyss, yet it also seemed to come from the sky. At the same time, Shibai's light figure began to tremble violently. Along with the trembling, an unparalleled bloodline power was born from the light figure of Shibai. Wherever the spikes pierced into, The green seal script turned into tiny whirlpools. The bloodline power flowed through the spikes and rushed into the body of the five-colored sea god shell. Woo! The entire five-colored sea god shell turned upside down. A huge five-colored halo appeared from afar. It was the primordial spirit of the five-colored sea god shell. Oh no! The five-colored sea god shell was shocked. He didn't expect Daoist Witch to have such an unfathomable ability. His biggest reliance was the five-colored halo. This halo contained the truth of the five elements. Everything in the world would be restrained by this five-colored halo. Unfortunately, Daoist Witch's ability was a soul cultivator. It had nothing to do with the five elements. Even the brush was a brush of life. It didn't belong to the five elements either. That was why the five-colored sea god shell's ability failed. In addition to the five-colored halo, one of the divine powers of the five-colored seashell was the five-colored realm. The realm was bordered by the shell of the seashell. Any cultivator, whether human or demon, who was enveloped by the realm, would be isolated from the outside world. Even if the great sage of the demon tribe had the star mark, it would be extremely difficult for him to escape from the realm. The golden-winged great roc once fell into the sea god shell and spent a lot of effort to escape. Unfortunately, the five-colored sea god shell didn't know that Daoist Witch had obtained the inheritance of the 13 great gods of Meng Mountain. Shi Bai's bloodline power was one of them. When the five-colored sea god shell trapped Daoist Witch in its five-colored sea god shell, it isolated Daoist Witch from the outside world. However, it also exposed its primordial spirit to Daoist Witch. Although his original body was everywhere in this five-colored domain, his actions were tantamount to inviting a wolf into the house when faced with the bloodline power of a ninth-grade elemental force. Therefore, when Daoist Witch activated his bloodline power, the five-colored sea god shell hid his primordial spirit very well. All illusions were useless in front of the ubiquitous bloodline power. Daoist Witch's primordial spirit was easily pulled out his primordial spirit. The five-colored sea god seashell was really scared out of his wits. At this moment, his primordial spirit was hundreds of miles away from Taoist sorcerer. However, this distance was nothing in the eyes of the great sage of the demon clan. Almost without hesitation, the bloodline primordial spirit general opened its mouth and a pillar of five-colored brilliance shot into the sky, piercing straight towards Daoist Witch's head. Daoist Witch was Daoist Witch was Daoist Witch was Daoist Witch. Daoist Witch wasn't afraid at all. He waved his hand and the brush waved in front of his eyes. A picture of plum blossoms suddenly appeared. The plum blossoms seemed to come alive as the brush was lifted. They expanded rapidly and covered hundreds of miles of space in an instant. The plum blossoms on the plum blossoms contained endless vitality. When the murderous light beam landed on the plum blossoms, it turned into nothing. Although the light beam was so powerful that the plum blossom's vitality couldn't completely destroy it, the five-colored sea god shell's primordial spirit dimmed in the explosion. On the other side, Daoist Witch also opened his mouth. Whoosh! The thick green light beam condensed into the shape of a flying sword. It pierced through space and flew towards the primordial spirit in the distance. Gotcha! Seeing the soul sword fly out, the five-colored sea god shell felt a sense of danger from his soul. He didn't dare to be careless. He couldn't care less about his primordial spirit being restrained by Daoist Witch's bloodline power. He hurriedly activated the power of space and layers of five-colored spatial barriers appeared. However, the barriers were transparent in front of the soul sword. The soul sword wasn't restricted by the power of space at all. It forced its way towards the primordial spirit even faster than lightning. Faced with such a strange soul cultivator's attack, the five-colored sea god seashell could only dodge. However, his primordial spirit was controlled by the power of Daoist Witch's bloodline. Not only could he not dodge, he was also pulled towards the soul sword. At this point, the five-colored sea god seashell didn't dare to hold back anymore. Boom! With a loud sound, the five-colored halos within thousands of miles suddenly surged and the entire five-colored realm collapsed. As the starlight shone high up in the sky, two giant shells engraved with mysterious ultimacy shook in the distance. Daoist Witch sensed that his bloodline power had missed. Similarly, where the soul sword landed, rings of 5-colored halos bloomed like flowers. However, the soul sword couldn't break through the defense of the 5-colored sea god seashell. Daoist, which didn't dare to be careless. He hurriedly kept his soul sword. Then, he raised his hand and imitated Xiaohua. Boom! A bunch of green seal text rushed into the sky, and countless godly and ghostly sounds reverberated within a 1,000-mile radius. The green seal text landed on Daoist sorcerer's body, and great god Shibai's image changed again. He turned into the image of great god Dijiang with a human face, a bird's body, 4 wings on his back, and 6 claws on his chest, abdomen, and legs. As great god Dijiang was born, Daoist, which suddenly flashed and flew to the sky above the 5-colored seashell. Daoist, which waved his 6 claws, and a dark green brilliance shrouded thousands of miles in starlight. A space domain was formed. Great god Dijiang had the power of space. Daoist, which used the power of space to trap the great saint of the demon race in the 5-colored sea god shell. The 5-colored sea god shell was lured away by Daoist, which only Golden Wing Great Peng and Xiaohua were left in the sky. Golden Wing Great Peng wasn't in a hurry to attack. Instead, he coldly looked at the 2 groups and said to Xiaohua, "Human Great Ascension Stage, you're quite capable. You were able to recruit so many experts. It seems that this saint underestimated you." Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said flatly, "It's nothing. They're just my avatars." Ah. The golden-winged great rock raised his head and laughed loudly. "You might be able to fool a 7th-grade origin energy kid with such a crude lie, but if you bring it to us, the great sages of the demon race, wouldn't you be looking down on us? No matter how exquisite your Dao techniques are, how can you refine another Confucian avatar with the same cultivation level as you? Even the most wondrous avatar technique of the demon race can't refine so many completely independent avatars." Hee hee. Xiaohua smiled but did not reply. The golden-winged Great Peng thought that he had exposed Xiaohua's lie and said, "You don't have to hide anything. Your human race has secretly nurtured so many supreme cultivators. What exactly are you planning? If this saint hadn't come to Bai Qingyu on a whim today, I really wouldn't have thought that the demon race would covet the 1,000 demons sacred realm before the battle between immortals and Buddhas has ended." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He couldn't explain it. It was originally a very simple matter, but when it came from the mouth of the first great saint of the demon race, it immediately became too complicated. It actually reached the level of a war between the demon race and the demon race. "Do you want to answer now? Or do you want to wait until this saint kills you?" Golden Wing Great Peng asked coldly. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't answer, Golden Wing Great Peng spread his wings. Seeing that the space around the golden-winged great rock had already formed countless tiny whirlpools and streams of moonlight were pouring out, Xiaohua naturally knew that this question was merely a challenge. Today's battle was already unavoidable. "Let's fight." Xiaohua spat out 2 words faintly. Then his figure flashed, turning into lightning and rushing towards Golden Wing Great Peng. The wishful staff in his hand had already been swung out. The golden-winged Great Peng had been accumulating power for a long time. When it saw Xiaohua flying over, it spread its wings, and its entire body turned into a stream of light. Its 2 golden claws carried the power of heaven and earth, and the aura of a great sage, as it descended from the sky towards Xiaohua's head. Boom! The wishful steel staff hit the golden claw, but a small crack appeared on the golden claw. Several unmatched forces poured out from the cracks of the claw. Xiaohua's wishful steel staff flew diagonally with the golden light. Xiaohua's body was hit by the demon body of the golden-winged giant Peng bird. "Damn it!" Xiaohua cursed. He knew that his magical power was not the opponent of the first master of the demon race. Then he grabbed with both hands. Boom! The thick 9th heaven divine thunder turned into a thunder sword in Xiaohua's hand. Looking at the golden wing Great Peng's figure, which was more ferocious than a mountain, Xiaohua stretched out his hand. The thunder cut through the sky and hit the wings of the golden wing Great Peng. Boom! Where the lightning landed, the golden-winged rock's body was stopped. Although its wings, which seemed to be made of gold, were bombarded into a mess by the lightning, The golden light that overflowed once again annihilated the lightning. Damn it! The feathers of the golden-winged great peng were disheveled. He couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed and angry. He also cursed and flapped his wings. Woo-woo! A hurricane was born, blowing the space within 1,000 miles until it collapsed. The powerful hurricane landed on Xiaohua's body. Not only did it cause his protective light to sway, but it also made it impossible for him to stand steadily in the air. He was about to fall into the distance. But just as Xiaohua's figure was just out of balance and fell into the hurricane. Whoosh! Suddenly, Xiaohua's body flashed with a light blue brilliance. Then Xiaohua urged the wind escape technique. Against the wind, he approached the golden wing great peng in the blink of an eye. Oh! Seeing that Xiaohua actually knew the wind escape technique, the golden wing great peng was a little surprised. However, he was not afraid of anything. With a flap of his right wing, it seemed as if the entire sky was collapsing as he smashed toward Xiaohua. Rumble! The golden-winged rock's right wing had only just flapped when Xiaohua first moved. As his hands rubbed, thousands of crystal lights fell into the air, and layers of divine lightning from the 9 heavens were born from the top of his head, rushing towards the golden-winged rock like a mountain flood. Moreover, just as the lightning poured down, Xiaohua waved his hands slightly again. Hundreds of strands of 4-colored spiritual fire were caught in the lightning and rushed towards the golden wing great peng. P.S. Thank you, Mr. Xianqing, for representing all the fellow Daoists. Thank you, fellow Daoists, for your support. Chapter 4384. The golden-winged rock's right wing had already flapped out. The space within a few hundred li had just collapsed when it was immediately covered by the lightning tide, disappearing without a trace in a few breaths of time. As for the golden-winged rock, the golden light in its eyes flickered. Gee! With a clear cry, its entire demonic body suddenly retreated, and its pair of golden wings flapped again. This time was different from before. Not only did the wings burst forth with a pillar of starlight, the innate demonic characters on the feathers also appeared. Along with the flapping of the wings, there were also tens of millions of golden lights that either condensed into flying swords or sharp thorns, attacking the lightning tide like a storm. Boom! 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 An explosion that was even more violent than the other two battles shook the sky thousands of miles away. The golden-winged rock let out another sharp cry. Its wings flapped, and its entire demonic body flew out from the explosion, attacking Xiaohua. Clearly, it wanted to take advantage of the victory to pursue and attack. How could Xiaohua not know what it was thinking? Seeing its demonic body appear, Xiaohua raised his hand and waved it. Once again, an extremely large amount of lightning condensed into a huge fist and struck down. Seeing that it had just flown past the explosion and was about to be hit by a fist, the golden-winged great rock opened its mouth. Woo! A golden beam of light shot out and hit the fist. With a loud bang, the fist was shattered, and the lightning scattered everywhere. That golden pillar of light was also annihilated in midair. The golden-winged rock flew out proudly. Boom, boom, boom. Another few faint sounds of fire whistling rang out. Between the golden-winged rock's wings, abdomen, and other parts, they were all ignited by the 4-colored spiritual fire. Ah! Xiaohua laughed. The large hand that was originally going to attract the golden-winged rock's attention dissipated in midair, and he raised his hand again to prepare a transcendent artifact. How is this possible? Seeing its own golden feathers actually melting under the 4-colored spiritual fire, and the demonic characters on its abdomen feathers being annihilated by the 4-colored spiritual fire, the golden-winged rock almost didn't dare to believe its own eyes. He hurriedly retreated and flapped his wings again. Beams of starlight and moonlight and demonic runes surged, trying to destroy the 4-colored spiritual fire. Unfortunately, when all the power of the stars and moon and the demonic runes landed on the 4-colored spiritual fire, not only was it unable to extinguish the spiritual fire, but it also made the spiritual fire even more vigorous. Furthermore, the violent hurricane was unable to extinguish the 4-colored spiritual fire. The 4-colored spiritual fire was like a maggot that followed the golden-winged rock closely. Hand over your life. Seeing the golden winged rock in panic, Xiaohua roared and waved his hand, releasing the death spirit origin light. Boom! The thing with a nose and eyes appeared on the sword gourd, and then the death spirit origin light also soared into the sky, falling towards the golden winged rock's neck. Swoosh! At this moment, the golden crown on the golden winged rock's head emitted a golden light. This golden light was oval in shape and covered the golden winged rock's head. When the death spirit origin light landed on this golden light, it was unable to cut down anymore. The golden winged rock snorted coldly again, and a layer of strange demonic characters appeared on its demonic body again. After this demonic character appeared, a phantom of the golden winged rock was born, like a molted shell. And the real demonic body had clearly shrunk by one size. Although it was only a space of a few miles, the four-colored spiritual fire was actually unable to pass through the phantom formed by the demonic characters. Whoosh! Seeing that the demonic characters were effective, the golden winged rock immediately flew and escaped from the shell. Looking at the demonic character shell again, in just a few breaths, it had already been completely engulfed by the four-colored spiritual fire. Huff! The golden winged rock let out a long breath, and the flashing golden eyes revealed an ominous glint. Looking at Xiaohua in the distance, it was about to attack again. Suddenly, the golden winged rock was stunned. The golden light in its eyes suddenly converged, and then circles of golden light shot out from its eyes. What was extremely strange was that where the golden light fell, the space seemed to be washed by a rainstorm, and the scenery changed. When the mist covering the scenery was lifted, the golden winged rock was surprised to find that the previous four-color spirit fire was not extinguished at all, but it was frantically burning its wings and beastkin body. Looking at Xiaohua in the distance, he was holding the sword gourd in his left hand, and he was making gestures again. There was a mirage butterfly on his shoulder, and there was also a trace of surprise on his face. It turned out that everything just now was just an illusion created by the dream mirage butterfly. Xiaohua wanted to use this illusion to let the four-colored spiritual fire completely kill the golden winged rock. Unfortunately, the golden winged rock was really powerful, and this illusion was still discovered by it. However, the golden winged rock did not have time to think too much, because at the same time that the illusion disappeared, a golden light fell from the sky along with Xiaohua's seal again. This golden light was so sharp that even the golden winged rock could not help but be startled. The golden winged rock could not care about the four-colored spiritual fire around its body. Its figure hurriedly shook towards the sky, and huge phantoms instantly appeared in the air. The golden winged rock's astonished expression could be seen clearly in each of the phantoms. Shwa! There was a soft sound, like rain falling on banana leaves. The golden light of the soaring dragon scissors fell, and each of the phantoms was cut with a bloody mark. In the sky above 100 miles, the golden winged rock's mournful cries suddenly sounded. A string of golden blood drops fell with the wind. The soaring dragon scissors had succeeded in one strike. Xiaohua could not believe his eyes. This was the strongest expert of the demon clan. How could it be so easily injured by him? However, at this time, Xiaohua could not care so much. He raised his hand and the soaring dragon scissors turned into a dragon again. The dragon's tail moved high in the sky, and like lightning, it struck the golden winged rock again. Meanwhile, his figure soared into the sky, and the thunderous hand struck towards the golden winged great rock like a meteor. Whether it was the soaring dragon scissors or the big hand, they had already stirred up the surrounding hundreds of miles of space. When the heaven-earth yuan qi fell, the brilliance of the stars and the moon was mixed in. Waves of black and white void power also came to join in the fun. It was really a scene of chaos. Shwa! There was no surprise. The soaring dragon scissors once again struck the golden winged rock's body, and another drop of golden blood fell. At the same time, Xiaohua's thunder hand also hit the golden winged rock's body. The several hundred miles of demonic body was hit by the big hand, and the four-colored spiritual fire had already completely covered the golden winged rock's demonic body. Damn it! In the flames, the golden winged rock's eyes were still golden like lightning, and it looked at Xiaohua fiercely. Xiaohua's face was innocent. He shrugged his huge shoulders and said with a smile, "The rock sage is well aware that this matter was stirred up by the demon clan of the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. It has nothing to do with this Xiao. If anything happens to the rock sage, I'll send the demon monarch of the sky concealing ridge to accompany you. I won't let you be too lonely in the afterlife." Ah! The horror on the golden-winged rock's face suddenly disappeared, and it laughed heartily. A mere grand ascension stage human dares to boast so shamelessly? You think you can do anything to me with these puny spiritual fire of yours? As it spoke, the four-colored spiritual fire began to burn brightly, completely beyond Xiaohua's control. Not good. How could Xiaohua not know that the golden-winged rock had already come up with a countermeasure? The four-colored spiritual fire was extremely strange, and even Xiaohua himself didn't know how to deal with it. He didn't think that the golden-winged rock would be able to break free. Now that the soaring dragon scissors had failed, Xiaohua could only use the demonic saber slaughter. A ferocious light flashed through Xiaohua's eyes as he raised his left arm slightly, and a layer of crimson light emerged from his left hand. It was also at this moment that the golden-winged rock let loose a mournful cry. Within the four-colored spiritual fire, the golden-winged rock suddenly disappeared, and its entire demonic body transformed into a layer of crimson light. The crimson light surged like demonic blood and rapidly expanded, instantly creating a gap in the four-colored spiritual fire. Then, without waiting for Xiaohua to take any action, a loud bang resounded, and a pillar of blood-colored brilliance soared into the sky. It was no less than 30,000 meters high. Furthermore, there were crimson threads seeping through the gaps between the four-colored spiritual fire. This is... Xiaohua was completely dumbstruck as he stared at the pillar of crimson light with a perplexed expression. However, several breaths later, another bird cry rang out, and this cry was filled with joy and relief. Following this cry, a crimson projection that was only 1,000 feet in size appeared at the top of the pillar of crimson light. As soon as this projection appeared, an exceptionally clear star mark appeared within it. On top of the star mark, the creases of the mountain range and the fine traces of the river could be clearly seen. Swoosh! Xiaohua's gaze had just landed on the star mark when it immediately emitted a resplendent radiance. The radiance not only covered the tyrannical illusory figure but also illuminated the space within a radius of 10,000 miles. At the same time, in the endless starry sky, there was also a star that emitted starlight, covering a large area of the starry sky. Boom! Another deafening roar resounded, and the entire night sky seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Pillars of starlight and moonlight filled the night sky, which were filled with a primordial aura, poured down like a torrential river, ignoring space and instantly enveloping a radius of 10,000 miles. Along with this pillar of starlight and moonlight, there was also a heaven and earth restriction that enveloped an area of several thousand li. Not to mention that the four-colored spiritual fire was instantly extinguished, not to mention that Xiaohua was imprisoned by this heaven and earth restriction. He couldn't even move. Even the thoughts in his mind had slowed down. Nirvana rebirth? Xiaohua was dumbfounded. Xiaohua was restricted by the heaven and earth phenomenon, and when Chu, the flying feather void beast, Daoist Wu, and the five-colored sea god Shell were also affected by this phenomenon. Although they didn't suffer as much as Xiaohua, they couldn't use their abilities smoothly, and the battle between them was also stopped. In particular, the Heaven and Earth Pagoda suppression collapsed under this Heaven and Earth phenomenon, and Daoist Wu's spatial restriction also collapsed and could no longer be perfected. Chapter 4385. Looking at the moonlight tide falling and rushing into the star mark rapidly expanded. Along with the expansion of the star mark was the valiant will of the golden-winged rock. That will was rising steadily. In just a few breaths of time, a star several hundred miles in size was already in sight, and that will had reached a terrifying level once again. Damn it! Xiaohua urged his magic power with all his strength, and the mysterious dark cloud also urged his soul technique, trying his best to resist the invasion of this will. He understood that if he was invaded by this will, not only would he be timid when he saw the golden-winged rock in the future, he would not dare to fight. Even his own Dao realm would be damaged. Once the stars were formed, they began to slowly rotate in the sky. With each rotation, the starlight tide would become a little thicker. After 365 revolutions, the starlight tide was like a huge stone pillar that ran through the stars in the sky and the stars on the ground. Another clear sound rang out, and the rotation of the star came to an abrupt stop. At the same time, the pillar of light from the moon and stars scattered, and all the phenomena in the world immediately fell into the star. Even all the shackles and wills disappeared like streams returning to their origin. Just as Xiaohua's thoughts were able to move nimbly, ka, the star let out an obscure sound. This sound sounded very simple, but when it fell into Xiaohua's ears, it was as if the world was collapsing. Xiaohua almost reached out his hands to cover his ears. It was also with this sound that the planet collapsed towards the center. A transparent, golden-winged rock made of gold flew out of the planet once again. Damn it! Just as the golden-winged rock flew out, a solid golden light shot out from his eyes and landed directly on Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua cursed, "What's going on? Haven't I always been the one to break through in life and death situations? How can it fall on this guy's head today?" As he spoke, Xiaohua didn't hesitate at all. The true essence within his body was activated without any regard for his life, and the thunderclap ninth heaven was displayed. Xiaohua's entire body almost turned transparent, and like a bolt of lightning he charged towards the horizon. Ha! Seeing Xiaohua's unparalleled thunder escape technique, the golden-winged rock did not put it in his eyes at all. He laughed and said, "Since that's the case, why are you still running? Between heaven and earth, where can you escape to?" As it spoke, the golden-winged rock spread its wings, and the space nearby trembled. The golden-winged rock did not seem to move at all, but the space suddenly folded, like layers of mountains. By the time the golden-winged great rock moved, all the distance between them had been shaken off. Xiaohua's lightning-like flowing light was also caught in the middle. The golden-winged rock's sharp claws, which seemed to be made of gold, stretched out slightly. Those sharp claws immediately pierced through the void and landed on Xiaohua's head. The wind under the sharp claws tore through the void, and Xiaohua's golden body flickered rapidly under this wind. So fast! This was Xiaohua's first time encountering an opponent that was comparable to his lightning evasion technique. While he was astonished, he slapped his own head. Boom! A large hand emerged from the top of his head and collided with the golden-winged rock's sharp claws. Amidst the loud explosion, the golden-winged rock's body was sent tumbling. After Xiaohua's hand was shattered, his entire body fell to the ground again. Damn it! Xiaohua's figure fell. Seeing the golden-winged rock attack again, he pondered in his heart, this golden-winged rock is the first great saint of the demon race, and can be said to be the most powerful demon race in the 3 continents. This Xiao was originally not his opponent. Just now, he borrowed this Xiao's hand to be reborn. I'm afraid he has already passed the last bottleneck and reached the peak of the 9th level of origin energy. He might have already reached the edge of breaking through the void. This kind of expert, how can this Xiao be his opponent? Even if I use the Devil Blade murder, I'm afraid I can't really kill him. On the contrary, it will cause unnecessary trouble. Hee. Thinking of this, Xiaohua sneered. Seeing the golden-winged rock's figure very strangely appear in front of him again, and those sharp claws once again stretched out into the void, pride grew in his heart. Even if I don't use the Devil Blade murder, could it be that this Xiao can't kill you? Fellow Daoist, please come out. Xiaohua shook the Kunlun mirror, and the celestial roared and flew out from the space. The celestial rushed out, and without saying anything, he waved his fist to meet the golden-winged rock's sharp claws. Boom boom boom. The celestial's fist was tempered by 6 kinds of origin energy, and was incomparably hard, comparable to the golden-winged rock's golden claws. In the midst of the rumbling, the golden-winged rock's sharp claws flickered with golden light, and the celestial's fist also flickered several times. Fellow Daoists, please? Since he released the celestial, Xiaohua might as well go all the way, and shook the Kunlun mirror again. Boom boom boom. 18 rays of brilliance appeared from the Kunlun mirror at the same time, and 18 8th-level scattered nascent souls flew out at the same time. Each scattered nascent soul rushed out, and the entire world would shake violently. Countless amounts of heaven and earth's origin energy didn't need to be activated by any spells, and formed countless hurricanes that fell on the bodies of these scattered nascent souls. Hiss! The golden-winged roc sucked in a breath of cold air as if he had a toothache. His sword-like eyes couldn't help but become blurred again. However, that blurred gaze fell on the Kunlun mirror in Xiaohua's hand. He really couldn't imagine how many experts there were in the legendary Kunlun mirror, the legendary Kunlun paradise. He could ignore Xiaohua's Mahayana cultivation base. He could also ignore Wenchu's Wenchu realm. He could also ignore Daoist Wu's 9th-level origin energy. However, he couldn't ignore the strength of the celestial and the 18 8th-level scattered nascent souls that just appeared. The golden-winged roc was very clear in his heart that his strength surpassed Xiaohua's. With the help of Xiaohua's four-colored spirit fire, he completely quenched the impurities in his body and recondensed his body with the power of the stars. His strength surpassed Xiaohua's. Even if Xiaohua, the celestial and 5/8 tribulation scattered nascent souls, he could still kill them. However, what he was facing now wasn't 5/8 tribulation scattered nascent souls, but 18/8 tribulation scattered nascent souls, which was 18 Xiaohus. Even if the golden-winged roc was only one step away from breaking through the void, how could it be the opponent of so many 9th-level origin energy cultivators? Needless to say, just as the golden-winged roc was thinking, the 18 8th-level scattered nascent souls had already spread out, and each of them made the exact same gestures at the same time. Boom! Just with the same sound, 18 thunder hands of the same power grabbed at the golden-winged roc from 18 directions. Not good. The golden-winged roc was slightly startled, and he flapped his wings rapidly. Moreover, he spat out a thick beam of starlight from his mouth, wanting to shatter these big hands. Boom boom boom. The wings hit 2 big hands, and the thick beam of starlight hit 3 big hands, and the remaining 13 big hands almost fell on the golden-winged roc's body at the same time. The golden-winged roc's demon body immediately emitted a soaring demon light. This demon light was like a raging fire, blocking the big hands. However, at the same time that several big hands were annihilated, one big hand actually fell on the golden-winged roc's body. Gotcha! The lightning was no less powerful than before. At the same time that the demon light was destroyed, the golden demon body that the golden-winged roc had just condensed began to melt under the impact of the lightning. Damn it! The golden-winged roc's heart tightened, and he was just about to counterattack. Boom! At this moment, the void shattered, and the celestial flew out of the void in an extremely strange manner. Those 2 fists quickly hit the golden-winged roc's abdomen, and in the roar, 2 huge deep holes appeared in his abdomen. The golden-winged roc was furious. With a long cry, he spat out a golden brilliance from his mouth and hit the celestial. Swish! This brilliance was so powerful that where the brilliance fell, the celestial's flesh and Daoist robes all melted, leaving only a craggy white bone. It looked very horrifying. This white bone even somersaulted a dozen times in the air under the impact and fell in midair. Seeing that the celestial had fallen, countless chi of heaven and earth surged, and the flesh and blood grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. The golden-winged roc flapped his wings, and the pillar of light that could topple a mountain was about to fall, wanting to take the opportunity to kill the celestial. However, without waiting for the golden-winged roc's wings to fall, a huge fist suddenly appeared from the void. Bang! It smashed on his head. The golden-winged roc's eyes swayed, and Xiaohua's figure actually swayed into 2 in the air. The golden-winged roc was furious. Who hadn't seen bullies before, but bullies like this were really rare. Gee! The golden-winged roc let out a long cry, and the power of the stars and moon rushed out again. The entire demon body instantly turned into the shape of a star, and at the same time, the star suddenly shook, and the space several miles to the left instantly collapsed, and this collapse spread over 1,000 miles. Wherever this collapse passed, all living things were destroyed. Hee hee. The 18 scattered nascent souls sneered, and their hands formed seals at the same time. 18 lightning balls covered the space around the scattered nascent souls, and no matter how the demon light swept past, it couldn't disperse the lightning. The scattered nascent souls avoided this disaster, not to mention the Celestial and Xianxia. They each activated their domains, and although their domains were broken and couldn't resist the golden winged rock's spatial collapse, their bodies weren't injured at all. Seeing that the golden winged rock was so valiant, Xianxia was also secretly shocked. Damn it, if I didn't have so many methods, I'm afraid I would have been killed by this guy as soon as I came up. So far, I've dealt with every move, but I don't know what other secret techniques this great demon saint has. As the saying goes, what you worry about will come true. Just as Xianxia was pondering, the golden-winged Great Peng's body once again flickered intensely. Countless pillars of starlight and moonlight descended. Boom. With 3 consecutive booms, 3 identical golden-winged Great Pengs appeared within the pillars of starlight and moonlight. Chapter 4386. Is this the demon race's doppelganger technique? Xianxia scanned with his divine sense and saw that these 3 golden-winged rocks were exactly the same in terms of aura, strength, and pressure. He couldn't help but be dumbstruck. Gee! The 3 golden-winged rocks raised their heads and let out a long cry. They each urged their wings to separately pounce on the scattered nascent soul, Celestial, and Xianxia. Go! Xianxia smiled coldly. With a wave of his hand, the celestial skeleton fell into the air. That celestial had long sensed it. His body and mind swayed, and he fell into the skeleton. Boom! A fierce flame instantly emerged from the celestial skeleton and covered the golden-winged rocks pouncing over. The golden-winged rocks cried out in surprise, and their demon body instinctively retreated. Gotcha! At this moment, the laws of heaven and earth fell into the skeleton, and the aura of the skeleton was greatly reduced. However, even so, the golden-winged rock's doppelgangers still didn't dare to rashly approach. The golden-winged rocks didn't enter, but that didn't mean that the celestial wouldn't enter. The celestial waved his hand and took the essence from Xiaohua's body. His body rapidly expanded, and then, the 3 mouths spat out 3-colored brilliance, trapping the golden-winged rocks. And then, the celestial waved his 6 arms and pounced on the golden-winged rocks. Looking at the celestial's fierceness, anyone would think that he was the demon race's first great sage. Having his essence extracted by the celestial skeleton, Xianxia couldn't move for a while. Seeing that the other 18 scattered nascent souls had surrounded the golden-winged rock's doppelganger, Xianxia raised his hand again. The Kunlun mirror vibrated without any light, and another 18 8th-rank scattered nascent souls rushed out, once again surrounding the golden-winged rock's doppelganger. Damn it, you can't play like this, right? The golden-winged rocks almost collapsed. How many 9th-rank essence power Mahayana cultivators do you have in your Kunlun mirror? Kill! Xianxia looked coldly at the golden-winged rocks. He simply waved his hand and acted like a shopkeeper, instructing the 36 8th tribulation's scattered nascent souls. Kill! The group of scattered nascent soul cultivators roared at the same time. The primordial chi of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles frantically surged into their bodies. As their hands formed seals, countless dragon-like thunderbolts were born in the void. Previously, when the golden-winged Great Peng was attacked by 18 scattered nascent souls, he was shocked at first and did not have time to observe carefully. Now that 36 scattered nascent souls were channeling their mana at the same time, the golden-winged Great Peng immediately saw that these scattered nascent souls were different from real human cultivators. He almost cried out involuntarily, "No, this is the nascent soul spirit body." After saying that, greed appeared in the eyes of the golden-winged Great Peng bird. Almost without thinking, it spread its wings. Boom! Facing the 2 clones of the scattered nascent soul, the star marks on its wings suddenly emitted a strange aura of desolation. Then, the wings, heads, and tails of the two golden-winged great peng birds didn't have any special changes. Their demonic bodies slowly showed the shape of stars again. With the appearance of the two stars, the aura of desolation became more and more powerful. The area within 100 miles of the two stars began to distort and collapse. A power of swallowing space rushed toward the group of scattered nascent souls like a ferocious ancient fierce beast. The strange phenomenon of the golden-winged great peng bird's nirvana and rebirth shook Wenchu's heaven and earth pagoda. The imprisonment that was originally suppressing the flying feather Ni Kong beast was broken at once. The flying feather Ni Kong beast shook its body and wanted to escape into the void without hesitation. Unfortunately, at this time, the void had been imprisoned by the golden-winged great peng bird. Even as strong as the flying feather Ni Kong beast was, it could not enter. However, when it sensed the pressure around its body and Wenchu's figure that could not move, the flying feather Ni Kong beast was relieved. On one hand, it was always paying attention to the changes in the space imprisonment. On the other hand, it looked at the star phenomenon in the distance. The flying feather Ni Kong beast was confident that it could escape into the void with its magic skills at the moment when the space changed, leaving no chance for Wenchu. The phenomenon of the golden-winged great peng bird's rebirth was truly astonishing. Although the flying feather Ni Kong beast was the third great saint of the demonic clan, it could not help but admire it. A great saint was a demonic clan great saint who had obtained the recognition of the stars and could engrave star marks on their bodies. With these star marks, a demonic clan great saint would have an endless supply of the power of the stars and moon to use at any time. At the same time, because of these star marks, a demonic clan great saint could comprehend more of the power of the stars than an ordinary member of the void-swallowing demonic clan. They had more opportunities and could use the star marks to escape when breaking through the void. Even so, among the 6 demonic clan great saints, there might not even be one who could truly break through the void to reach a higher realm. The flying feather Ni Kong beast knew that this was the so-called opportunity. Sometimes, the flying feather Ni Kong beast envied the brains of humans. They could express illusory things in beautiful words. Opportunity was one of them. No one knew how to break through the void. Those who could break through the void directly went to a higher realm and did not leave behind any more information. However, there was one thing that all demonic clan great saints and void-swallowing demonic clan great saints knew, and that was power. Only when one was so powerful that the 3 continents could not contain them would they be able to open up passageways to higher realms in the void. But just how powerful was one? There was a lot more to it than that. The flying feather Ni Kong beast didn't know just how powerful he had to be able to break through the void, but he knew that there was no clear passageway in the void. Only when a passageway to a higher realm demonic clan great saint could there be a direction in the void. This was the conclusion that he had reached after searching through the void countless times. Why was the flying feather Ni Kong beast searching for this illusory spatial passageway? The reason was very simple. His power had reached a certain bottleneck, and after tens of thousands of years, he was unable to progress any further. As such, he had no choice but to find another way to find the legendary spatial passageway. At the same time, the flying feather Ni Kong beast also knew that it wasn't just him. All 6 great saints of the 1,000-demon holy realm were in the same situation. Their power had reached a bottleneck that was difficult to break through, and without an opportunity, they would most likely never be able to break through the void. However, what surprised him was that the golden-winged great peng truly lived up to its reputation as the most powerful being of the demonic clan. It was able to break through its bottleneck while battling a human grand ascension stage being. The flying feather Ni Kong beast didn't know what kind of secret technique the golden-winged great peng had used, but seeing as the golden-winged great peng's entire body had been reconstructed by the power of the stars, the flying feather Ni Kong beast knew that it wouldn't be long before the golden-winged great peng would be able to sense the passageway to break through the void. Holy fuck! Seeing as the golden-winged great peng had taken shape, the flying feather Ni Kong beast turned to Wenchu, who was also accumulating power in the distance, and he couldn't help but feel a burning desire in his heart. How about I give it a try as well? At this moment, the restriction dissipated like the tide. Boom boom boom. before the flying feather and Kong beast had a chance to do anything else, a series of rumbling booms rang out from close to 500 kilometers to the left. Wen Chu waved a hand, and the 9 states cauldrons flew into the air amidst surging auspicious clouds. As soon as the 9 states cauldrons appeared, 9-colored light immediately enveloped an area of over 500 kilometers, and streams of human fortune flowed through the night sky like rivers. The 9 states cauldrons were like the 9 states of the hidden immortal continent, firmly trapping the flying feather Kong beast within. The flying feather void beast was greatly alarmed. Wherever his gaze and Yuan sense reached, countless mountains, rivers, cities, city walls, and little rocks were born from this multicolored light. It was a little too much for his eyes to take in. Wave after wave of vast chi pillars emerged from all directions and crazily surged over, completely sealing off the surroundings. Damn it! The flying feather Kong beast didn't know what the 9 states cauldrons were, but he knew that they were definitely the imperial tools of a Confucian cultivator. Wen Chu had no intention of fighting him head-on. He only wanted to use the imperial tool to suppress him, so how could he possibly break through during a battle with Wen Chu? The flying feather Kong beast cursed angrily, and his figure flickered rapidly. The nearby void was like a door to the flying feather Kong beast, and it immediately opened up. Unfortunately, before the flying feather Kong beast could escape into the void, he saw countless streams of vast chi gushing out from the void. This vast chi had already condensed into the shape of inscriptions, and the inscriptions gave birth to the chanting of saints, blocking his way forward. The flying feather Kong beast snorted coldly, and his slightly stubby forelimbs stretched forward. Whoosh! All the inscriptions were torn apart, and the flying feather Kong beast ignored the impact of the inscriptions breaking and forced his way into the void. Boom! At this moment, another huge roar came from the top of the flying feather Kong beast's head, and then, an aura similar to the majesty of heaven and earth swept over madly. This aura was so perfectly combined with the aura of the human race in the 9 states cauldrons. Not only did it imprison the space within a radius of thousands of kilometers, but the void that the flying feather Kong beast was about to squeeze into suddenly became as solid as a mountain rock. Not to mention the flying feather Kong beast wanting to force his way in, it was difficult for him to squeeze out at this time. This is the auspicious artifact of the human race. The flying feather Kong beast suddenly came to his senses and shouted, "You? Where did you get this thing?" The essence of the Heaven and Earth Pagoda was a Daoist spiritual treasure, and it represented the will of heaven and earth. The 9 states cauldrons were the artifact of the human race, and it represented the fate and will of the human race. The 3 elements of heaven, earth, and man fell together, which was the harmony advocated by the human race's Confucian cultivators. Harmony represented the origin, and in this origin, how could the flying feather Kong beast escape? How could Wen Chu pay attention to the flying feather Kong beast's question? He opened his mouth and spat out the 5-colored innate chi, which turned into thousands of pearls outside the 9 states cauldrons and spread out in all directions. As soon as the 5-colored pearls fell on the 9 states cauldrons, the thousands of inscriptions in the cauldrons immediately twisted and began to combine with each other. In an instant, layers of mountains of text appeared, and with a rumbling sound, they suppressed the flying feather Kong beast. Roar! Seeing that the mountains of text were about to be formed, the flying feather Kong beast gritted his teeth and raised his head to roar. A layer of blood-red shadow appeared outside his monster body, and at the same time, the star engraved on his back shone brightly. A blood-red star, like a natural demon star, rapidly expanded. As soon as the star and moon appeared, the mountains of text immediately collapsed. With another rumbling sound, the blood-red shadow of the flying feather Kong beast slammed into the 9 states cauldrons. Ping! A wave of air rose into the sky, and the 9 states grand array was smashed open. In particular, the flying feather Kong beast also collided with the cauldrons. His body shook, and two identical blood-red stars appeared and flew to the left and right at the same time. The 9 states grand array was immediately torn apart. Chapter 4387. The flying feather void beast let out a cold snort. 2 blood-red claws grew out of the blood-red star, and they reached out for Wen Chu's head from several hundred miles away. Wen Chu was shocked. He raised his hand and slashed. Swoosh! Where the sword light fell, the blood-red claws were like nothingness and did not receive any damage at all. It was also at this moment that the blood-red claws fell on Wen Chu's head. Strangely, the blood-red claws did not fall, but produced a great suction force out of thin air. However, when the suction force fell on Wen Chu's body, it did not produce any effect. Ah! The flying feather void beast turned pale with fright. You are not human? Not to mention the flying feather void beast, even Wen Chu was puzzled. He hurriedly urged his true chi to check his body, but there was nothing wrong. At this time, Wen Chu heard the flying feather void beast's words and looked at its blood-red claws. He suddenly understood. The flying feather void beast was not only born with spatial magical powers, but also knew the power of bloodline. These claws must be to grab the bloodline out of his body. Unfortunately, Wen Chu was Xiao Hua's doppelganger. Although Wen Chu still cultivated to the 9th level of essence force, he was not a complete human. In particular, Wen Chu's essence was different from Xiao Hua's. His essence was completely obtained from the heavenly demon, which was the essence of the upper realm. Even if Wen Chu's bloodline existed, how could the flying feather void beast extract it? Ha! Wen Chu laughed and raised his hand to point at the heaven and earth pagoda. Boom! The heaven and earth pagoda roared again and fiercely pressed down. The torn 9 provinces' great array began to rapidly recover. Damn it! The flying feather void beast didn't understand why its innate ability didn't work, but at this point, it was useless to think too much. With a flap of its wings, it suddenly pounced toward the gap of the 9 regions' grand array. The sharp claws of its forelimbs slashed out of thin air and landed on the gap that was invisible to the naked eye. Open! The flying feather Ni Kong beast roared, and the formation was instantly torn apart. The power of the stars around the flying feather Ni Kong beast surged, and its body grew from hundreds of kilometers to thousands of meters in just a few breaths. Whoosh! There was a flash of light, and the flying feather Ni Kong beast broke free from the formation. Damn it! As it flew out of the formation, the flying feather Ni Kong beast's face turned red. He didn't dare to imagine that if the other demon clans knew that he had transformed and escaped from the 9 regions' grand array, where would he put his face as the 3rd great saint of the demon clan? The flying feather Ni Kong beast roared, and its monster body grew wildly. Just as it was about to pull itself together and fight with Wen Chu again, a dazzling light curtain emerged from the place where the golden-winged roc and Xiao Hua were fighting. The flying feather Ni Kong beast raised its eyes, and when it saw everything inside the light curtain, it was immediately stunned on the spot. The rebirth of the golden-winged roc also shattered the power of space of the great god Dijiang transformed by Daoist witch. The 5-colored sea god shell, like the flying feather Ni Kong beast, saw the opportunity of the golden-winged roc, and its thoughts were the same as the flying feather Ni Kong beast's. However, it also understood that its strength couldn't be compared to the flying feather Ni Kong beast, and even more so, the golden-winged roc. Its bottleneck was far from being broken through. Moreover, it also understood that Bai Qingyu and the Fortune Gate were like fire and water, and it was likely that it was time for it to fight to the death with Daoist witch. Seeing that the shackles of the golden-winged roc's rebirth had disappeared, Daoist witch's space shackles had yet to fully form. The 5-colored sea god shell flashed with a 5-colored halo, and the entire space rumbled as it pounced towards Daoist witch. This wasn't a big deal, and Daoist witch's space shackles were instantly shattered. Moreover, before the 5-colored sea god shell's figure arrived, the suffocating air waves had already surged over and drowned Daoist witch. Daoist witch didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw that the 5-colored sea god shell had given up on all its abilities and was going all out with its main body. He was proficient in soul techniques, but he didn't cultivate his body, so how could he be a match for the five-colored sea god shell? Needless to say, the five-colored sea god shell's five-colored demonic light was powerful, and it had already corroded all the origin energy within 1,000 miles. Even the light and shadows in the space were distorted to an extreme degree. I'm afraid only a heavenly being can fight against this fellow. Daoist, which hurriedly spread out his four wings, and his figure nimbly dodged the attack of the five-colored sea god shell. At the same time, Daoist Witch's sharp claws activated the power of space again in an attempt to confine the five-colored sea god shell. Unfortunately, the power of space couldn't take shape under the attack of the five-colored sea god shell. Boo! Seeing the five-colored sea god shell flying towards him again, Daoist Witch had no choice but to dodge it again. When the five-colored sea god shell flew past him, the green light around Daoist Witch shone brightly again, and the green seal text flowed again. In just a moment, the figure of hooded god with a human body, a snake tail, and 7 hands appeared again. Facing the powerful shell of the five-colored sea god shell, Daoist Witch waved his 7 hands at the same time, and countless gods and ghosts screamed. The green seal text flashed in the air, and then a reddish-yellow land thousands of miles in size blocked the five-colored sea god shell's head. Although the land was thick and the green seal text's power was unpredictable, under the buzzing and rapid rotation of the five-colored sea god shell, the reddish-yellow land was cracked by the impact of the five-colored sea god shell. Pillars of earth rose into the sky, and in a few seconds, the land was shattered. Even Daoist Witch's figure was almost hit by the five-colored sea god shell. Seeing a wound on his back, Daoist Witch didn't dare to take the risk. He immediately turned into the figure of Dijiang and flapped his wings to dodge the five-colored sea god shell. In this way, Daoist Witch and the five-colored sea god shell were in a slightly awkward situation. Daoist Witch didn't dare to confront the five-colored sea god shell directly. Seeing the five-colored sea god shell rushing over, he could only dodge. After the five-colored sea god shell flew away, Daoist Witch chased after it and wanted to attack again. However, when the attack failed and the five-colored sea god shell turned around again, Daoist Witch could only dodge again. The 2 9th-level masters of the 3 continents could only be in a stalemate here. Everyone could leave the battle at any time, but no one could leave for the time being. When the five-colored sea god seashell had an idea and was about to use another method, the same dazzling light curtain appeared from where the golden-winged roc and Xiaohua were fighting. The five-colored sea god seashell saw everything inside the light curtain through the five-colored halo, and the rampaging figure suddenly stopped in midair. An extremely incredulous voice sounded from the seashell, the 7th great saint? When the golden-winged roc saw that the 36 scattered nascent soul cultivators were all spiritual bodies, he couldn't help but be greedy. The star shape appeared, and the power of swallowing sky pounced on the scattered nascent soul cultivators like a ferocious ancient beast. Seeing the 2 stars, Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and thought for a while. The Kunlun mirror in his hand shook again, and he cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Daoist Feng Wu." In the light pillar of the Kunlun mirror, the Feng Wu spread his wings and flew out. Seeing the golden-winged roc's power of swallowing sky, he sneered. Gee! With a long cry, he spread his wings, and 7 huge light pillars soared into the night sky. These light pillars were so dazzling, like a sky-high light curtain, illuminating the surrounding thousands of miles. Then, boom, 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 boom. A loud sound came from the bottom of the light pillars, and the Big Dipper stars floated out from the back of the Feng Wu. The Big Dipper stars in the night sky shone at the same time, filling the night sky like a string of pearls. 7 beams of starlight and moonlight filled with the aura of desolation descended and merged with the 7 beams of light. The Feng Wu's demon body expanded rapidly in front of the golden-winged roc's dumbfounded eyes. What was special was that as the demon body expanded, the Big Dipper stars also expanded, filling the space within 1,000 miles. The edges of each star were distorted, and the light and shadow were like ripples in a lake. The 7 powers of swallowing sky, which were not inferior to the golden-winged rocs, roared and pounced on the golden-winged roc's power of swallowing sky. You are the seventh great saint? The golden-winged rock also looked at the Feng Wu in disbelief and exclaimed, "Why are you at the Grand Ascension stage, human?" At this point, the golden-winged rock suddenly realized something. He looked at the Kunlun mirror in Xiaohua's hand and shouted, "You became a great saint in the Kunlun Wonderland?" No wonder. While the golden-winged rock was still in shock, the Feng Wu's power of swallowing sky had already tangled with the golden-winged rock's power of swallowing sky. The space within 1,000 miles was filled with traces of pitch black. This pitch black was so dazzling in the night sky that it looked like countless fishes were swimming freely. In this pitch-black surroundings, whether it was the vital energy of heaven and earth, the noble qi, or anything else, everything was being torn apart and sucked into the pitch-black darkness. Damn it. The great golden-winged rock's eyes flashed with golden light as he glared at the proud Feng Wu. He knew in his heart that if they were to compete in terms of cultivation, the seventh great saint might not be his match. However, in terms of star power alone, even if he had 3 clones and 3 star marks, he was still no match for the 7-star great saint. After all, the essence of the power of swallowing sky was the power of the stars. The 7-star great saint's 7-star great saint was not something a 1-star great saint like him could compare to. However, the golden-winged rock was in an awkward position. In the face of 36 scattered nascent souls, most of his abilities were useless. He could only use the power of swallowing sky from the demon race's great saint and his powerful physical body. However, his physical body was no match for the celestial. At this moment, the celestial had already beaten one of his clones to the point where he couldn't fight back at all. Not to mention, the celestial's 3 beams of light were very strange. The clone's essence, qi, and spirit couldn't resist at all. He could only dodge and evade, and it wouldn't be long before he was defeated or even killed by the celestial. He could only use the power of swallowing sky from the celestial. However, the power of swallowing sky was so weak in front of a 7-star great saint that it had become the golden-winged rock's fatal weakness. Chapter 4388. Of course, after the golden rock's humiliation and anger, fear appeared in his eyes. What could make the most powerful expert of the demon race so afraid? However, the number of pitch-black holes increased, and the suction force became stronger. Not only were the light pillars of the stars and moons sucked into them, but even the mountains and other objects on the ground were also torn apart by the suction force. Everything was sucked into the hole. It was not that there were no battles between great saints of the demon race, but they had never been so intense. The faint darkness from before had now begun to spread, and the golden rock felt that the stars in his demon body were about to be torn apart. He did not dare to be careless and hurriedly withdrew his divine ability. The 3 doppelgangers merged into one. However, without Feng Wu's cooperation, the darkness did not decrease at all. In fact, it even seemed to be swarming toward the golden rock. 7th great saint. The golden rock was frightened and hurriedly shouted, "You and I are both great saints of the demon race. We were born from the same root. Why are you so anxious to kill each other? Moreover, you are a great saint and have yet to enter the great sage hall. You don't know how powerful this star-swallowing power is. Look, if you and I don't stop, the entire Bai Qingyu, or even the entire 1,000 demons sacred realm, may be swallowed by this unknown thing." In fact, even before the golden-winged great rock spoke, Feng Wu had already sensed the power of the pitch-black darkness. He also wanted to stop, but this battle was started by the 3 demonic saints. How could he stop so easily? Now, hearing the golden-winged rock take the initiative to speak, Feng Wu took the opportunity to slowly retract the power of the stars and said in a loud voice, "Daoist Master Xiao is this saint's good friend. If you attack Daoist Master Xiao, you are attacking this saint. As long as Daoist Master Xiao does not agree to stop, this saint will not stop." Seeing that Feng Wu had withdrawn the star-swallowing power, the golden rock understood that Feng Wu wanted to stop. He smiled faintly and replied, "7th great saint, you are a great saint of the demon race. Why are you siding with outsiders? You are joining forces with a human Mahayana realm cultivator to attack a great saint of my race? I could not have become a great saint without perfected Zhao's help. This sage has already made a demon oath when I became a sage. As long as Daoist Master Xiao has any orders, this sage will not hesitate to die 10,000 times. Feng Wu naturally understood the tactic of giving a carrot after a stick. Therefore, Feng Wu replied very seriously, "Of course, this sage is the great sage of the demon clan. Naturally, I have to think of the demon clan. I came out now because I don't want things to get out of hand. If Rock Sage has the heart, this sage can naturally plead with Daoist Master Xiao." The golden-winged rock had just obtained benefits from Xiaohua, and now it saw Feng Wu come out of Xiaohua's Kunlun Wonderland. How could it not understand the difficulties that Feng Wu mentioned? He looked meaningfully at Feng Wu, then turned to Xiaohua. At this moment, Xiaohua was still standing with his hands in his sleeves, looking so innocent and harmless. The great golden-winged rock only pondered for a moment, and the stars grew dimmer. He smiled and said, "If you want to talk about help, I also received spiritual Master Zhao's help by chance. Based on this matter alone, this sage cannot be ruthless to Daoist Master Xiao. Don't you think so, Daoist Master Xiao?" Xiaohua narrowed his eyes, looked at the golden-winged rock, and then looked at the collapsing earth and space. He nodded and said, "Rock Sage knows how to repay kindness. As expected of the #1 expert of the demon clan. I am not as good as you. Fellow Daoist Feng Wu, thank you for your help. You are a trustworthy person. I will not force you to attack your fellow clansmen." "Thank you, Daoist Master Xiao." Feng Wu was overjoyed. He spread his wings, and the power of the stars was also about to be retracted. Unfortunately, the power of the two stars was already entangled in one place. How could Feng Wu retract it as he wished? Seeing that he could not retract the power of the stars, and the darkness increased, Feng Wu was anxious and shouted, "Fellow Daoist, help me!" Seeing Feng Wu anxious, how could Xiaohua not know that the situation was critical? He activated his magic power without hesitation. Hundreds of thunderbolts fell like horned dragons, trying to separate the power of the stars. Unfortunately, wherever the thunderbolts fell, the darkness would tear and devour them. There was no effect at all. At this moment, the celestial roared. 3 pillars of light soared into the sky and pounced straight down. These pillars of light were so dazzling that even the seemingly unparalleled darkness was temporarily covered up at this moment. "Fellow Daoist, don't be anxious. We will help you." Seeing that the celestials' light pillars could not stop them, Wen Chu and Daoist which hurriedly abandoned the 5-colored sea god shell and the flying feather void beast and flew over. The 2 of them activated their divine abilities, and the 5 Chi Thunder and 3 Corpse Yin Thunder struck out at the same time. Good. Xiaohua was overjoyed. With a thought, the 9 heavens divine thunder also waved. The 3 types of thunderbolts landed in one place and condensed into a bright and transparent thunderbolt. This thunderbolt's transparency corresponded to the darkness in the sky. When it landed, it wiped out a small part of the darkness. Now that the darkness was reduced, the 2 entangled powers of the stars immediately loosened. The Feng Wu hurriedly withdrew the power of the stars, and the brilliance of the stars that appeared dimmed a little. The golden-winged rock did not dare to be negligent and also withdrew the power of the stars. The brilliance of the stars that he manifested also dimmed a little. Just like this, Xiaohua, Wen Chu, and Daoist which worked together to activate the thunderbolts. The golden-winged rock and the Feng Wu tacitly withdrew the power of the stars bit by bit. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, all the darkness was wiped out. Phew! Not to mention Xiaohua, even the golden-winged rock heaved a long sigh of relief. Behind him, the 5-colored sea god shell and the flying feather void beast also recovered their demon forms. They looked on with some trepidation. Their previous intention to injure Xiaohua had long been thrown out of the window. Furthermore, when the Feng Wu withdrew the star patterns, her phoenix eyes flashed sharply and glanced at the 3 great sages. The three great sages of the demon clan were shocked and couldn't help but retreat slightly. After all, they were not facing a human Mahayana realm cultivator, but the Feng Wu Daoist which, Wen Chu, the celestial being, and Xiao Hua, who were all at the 9th level of essence qi. In the sky beside Xiao Hua, 36 scattered nascent soul cultivators who were also at the 9th level of essence qi were also eyeing covetously. The three great sages of the demon clan couldn't help but feel bitter. They really didn't dare to believe that if Xiao Hua harbored evil intentions, the three of them would not be able to escape unscathed. The Feng Wu spread her wings and withdrew the star patterns, but didn't withdraw her demon form. Even the celestial being didn't withdraw the white bones. The golden-winged rock's heart tightened. He also didn't dare to withdraw his demon form and only raised his voice. In my opinion, with Daoist Zhao's ability, it would be as easy as flipping his hand if he wanted to wipe Bai Qingyu out of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Therefore, it's unlikely that Daoist Xiao would do as Bai Qingyu said and scheme so much. Bai Qingyu is just a misunderstanding. Xiao Hua knew that this was the time to reconcile. Moreover, from what the golden-winged rock said, they didn't know about Bai Qingyu's scheme. He slightly frowned and nodded. That's right. Sage Rock is right. The so-called war between humans and demons is purely Bai Qingyu's nonsense. I'm not interested in such a war at all. If that's the case, Demon King Peng Jun of the Sky-Concealing Ridge colluded with Demon King Bai Qingyu to offend a great sage friend of the demons. They intended to provoke a war between great sages. The Sky-Concealing Ridge was just one of the many territories in Zhang Yuetian's eyes. It was really insignificant. In order to appease Xiao Hua's anger, the golden-winged rock didn't mind abandoning this little pawn. After the golden-winged rock finished speaking, he looked at the 5-colored seashell and the flying feather void beast and asked, "What do the two great sages think?" Hee. The flying feather void beast smiled faintly. "Since it has nothing to do with the war, I won't interfere. An Quan of the ancient Bell Mountain also sent a false message to my Xian space forest. His crime is also punishable. If wiping out the ancient Bell Mountain can appease Daoist Zhao's anger, I think it's worth it. However, this was all caused by Bai Qingyu. What do you think, Sage Rock? I, Bai Qingyu, have already been killed by Daoist Xiao. Demon King Bai Qing has also been captured by him. What else can I say?" The 5-colored seashell's tone didn't have the gentleness of the other two great sages. Rather, it carried a kind of resentment. "However, I'm really confused. Why would Bai Qing provoke the humans for no reason? I've never seen Bai Qingyu's message and don't know what happened to her. Moreover, when she saw us just now, Bai Qing was actually twisting words and forcing logic?" "Oh, I see." Hearing the 5-colored seashell's words, Xiao Hua couldn't help but feel relieved. This was because he had only learned about Shui Mingzi's goal from Ao Sheng and the ancient Bell Mountain's goal from Shui Mingzi. He actually didn't know about Demon King Bai Qingyu's goal or the Sky-Concealing Ridge's goal. From the words of the two great sages, Xiao Hua felt that the golden-winged rock shouldn't know about it, while the Sky-Concealing beast should know some inside information. However, the 5-colored seashell, who should know the truth, actually said some inexplicable words, as if it didn't know anything. There could only be one truth. All of this was a scheme of the 3 demon kings, and it had nothing to do with the 3 great sages. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua nodded slightly and said, "Sage Rock, you don't need to say more. I don't know the truth of this matter either. When I release the 3 demon kings, you'll know when you ask them. Moreover, I also want to know where the one suppressed by Bai Qingyu went. If the great sages agree to my conditions, it's not impossible to turn hostility into friendship." But the 5-colored seashell also had some doubts and replied, "If Bai Qing really offends you too much?" Boom. At this moment, under the ground that was previously torn apart by the darkness, a 7-colored shadow suddenly appeared. Another huge 7-colored seashell appeared in the shadow like the sky. Before the 5-colored seashell finished speaking, it covered Xiao Hua. "Ah?" Xiao Hua was shocked. He activated his spiritual power and lightning surged out from the surface of his body. His whole body turned illusory and immediately teleported to the distance. The seven-colored shadow and the seven-colored seashell also appeared in a flash and disappeared into the void. Within 1,000 miles, except for Xiaohua's disappearance, everything was no different from a few breaths ago. Even the night wind that had just calmed down was still blowing leisurely. Who? Wen Chu and the others were shocked. Their divine senses swept over quickly, but it was only a moment before Feng Wu's face changed greatly, because he couldn't perceive any special changes within 1,000 miles. Moreover, their perception of Xiaohua's space had completely disappeared. Chapter 4389. Ancestor? The five-colored sea god seashell cried out in disbelief when he saw the huge seven-colored shell disappear in a flash and the human Grand Ascension Stage cultivator who was talking to him a moment ago. Damn it! Hearing the five-colored sea god seashell's cry, the celestial being was enraged and was about to charge at the five-colored sea god seashell. Feng Wu hurriedly shouted, "Fellow celestial being, don't worry my ass," the celestial being shouted back. "Fellow Daoist Xiao is already gone. How can I not worry?" Buzz. Just then, 36 bolts of lightning shot into the sky. The 36 scattered nascent souls all activated the power of lightning and spread out, surrounding the entire space. Boom, boom, boom. With 3 explosions, huge pillars of starlight and moonlight fell. The five-colored sea god shell, the flying feather void beast, and the golden-winged great peng were covered in fierce flames again. The situation that had just calmed down became tense again because of the appearance of the seven-colored shell and Xiaohua's disappearance. In particular, the expressions of the 3 great saints of the demon race changed again. The golden-winged great peng looked around warily, and the golden light in his eyes flickered slightly. He already understood that the ancestor was only interested in Xiaohua and didn't put the celestial being, Feng Wu, and the others into the space. The 3 of them were still at a disadvantage. Moreover, the ancestor hadn't asked about the 1,000 demons' sacred realm for a long time. Even if the demon race and the demon race were to fight, she wouldn't intervene. Therefore, he couldn't hope for the ancestor to intervene. However, if Xiaohua didn't appear and give the order, the celestial being and Feng Wu wouldn't let him go. He could only fight to the death today. The golden-winged great peng understood, so how could the flying feather void beast not understand? He also turned his eyes and looked at the Feng Wu, the celestial being, and the scattered nascent souls. Finally, his gaze fell on the Feng Wu. "Ah, so it's the ancestor here." The golden-winged great peng sighed and looked at the five-colored sea god seashell. "Only now do I understand why Bai Qing was so bold." The five-colored sea god seashell understood the meaning of the song and put away his doubts. He smiled bitterly and said, "That's right. This saint truly did not expect that all of this was the ancestor's arrangement." Feng Wu understood what the 3 great saints of the demon race were thinking. He smiled coldly, looked at the five-colored seashell, and asked flatly, "Since this is the will of your ancestor, what is your decision?" There was no need for the five-colored sea god seashell to speak. The stars around the golden-winged great peng flashed as he said, "Since it's the ancestor's will, it's also the will of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. We won't disobey." See. Wen Chu heard and unconsciously sucked in a breath of cold air. He suddenly understood. That day, before Namomethria Buddha achieved fruition in the Great Snow Mountain, the colorful shellfish demon once said that he had a backer. According to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namomethria, even Mahavairakana Buddha was not willing to provoke his backer. Previously, whether it was Xiaohua or the other doppelgangers, they all thought that it was the great sage of the demon clan from the five-colored sea god shell. But in fact, that was not the case at all. It was the seven-colored sea god shell that was much more powerful than the five-colored sea god shell. Alright. Feng Wu's eyes widened as he shouted, "Since that's the case, then I won't waste my breath on you. If Daoist Master Xiao can survive, then there's no need for any grievances between us. Everything from before can be forgotten. What if the human Grand Ascension Stage cultivator can't survive?" The five-colored sea god shell asked in a worried voice. Hee. Wen Chu smiled coldly and replied, "Then there's no need for you to return to the great holy palace. And for the next 100,000 years, there won't be a great sage in the 1,000 demons' sacred realm." "How dare you!" The golden-winged great Peng was furious and flapped his wings, about to activate the power of the stars again. Cough cough. The flying feather Ni Kong coughed slightly and glanced at the golden-winged great Peng, then turned to Feng Wu with a smile and asked, "I am the third great sage of the great holy palace, flying feather Ni Kong. How should I address the seventh great sage?" Feng Wu looked at the flying feather Ni Kong for a long while before replying, "I'm the heaven-defying lightning phoenix." Heaven-defying? The flying feather void beast was a little surprised. It then extended its sharp claws and gave a thumbs up like a human. It praised, as expected of the phoenix sage who has close ties with the human race. "Even your name is so arrogant." This sage is impressed. "I wouldn't dare." Feng Wu shook her head. "I can't compare myself to Sage Ni, Sage Peng, and Sage Bei." "Ha!" The flying feather Ni Kong beast laughed and looked up at the stars in the distance. Who would have thought that 4 of the 7 great sages of the great holy palace would be gathered in this tiny Bai Qingyu? If the arcane pentaceratops, vermilion flame vermilion bird, and nether dragon spider come, then all 7 great sages are gathered. Feng Wu just listened quietly and didn't say anything. The flying feather void beast didn't seem to need Feng Wu to say anything. It continued, "Even though the great holy hall originally had 6 saints, other than Saint Bei, the other 5 saints didn't have any foundation. According to what I know, before the other 5 great sages became great sages, they all received the favor of our ancestors." "I see." Shock flashed through Feng Wu's eyes. The flying feather Ni Kong beast's words were very clear. The ancestor of the rainbow shell wasn't just the ancestor of the 5-colored seashell, but also the ancestor of all the great sages of the great holy palace. Feng Wu and the others didn't think that there would be such a transcendent existence in the 1,000 demons sacred realm. She wasn't a great sage, but she was stronger than a great sage. Of course, she was someone that even the Virokana revered one didn't want to provoke. If that's the case, Wen Chu's voice was as cold as ice. "Then fellow Immortal Xiao is most likely dead?" "That's right," the golden-winged great Peng shouted. "The human grand ascension stage is definitely no match for our ancestor." "Very well," the celestial being laughed. "Then we'll sacrifice you to fellow Daoist Xiao." Not necessarily. Before the golden-winged great Peng could speak, the 5-colored seashell hurriedly said, "The ancestor hasn't asked about the 1,000 demons sacred realm for hundreds of thousands of years. There must be a reason for her to act today. Moreover, this matter must be related to Bai Qingyu." "Nonsense." Daoist sorcerer was also a bit anxious. "Isn't she the one who caused all of this?" "The problem is..." The 5-colored seashell was very troubled. "This sage doesn't know why our ancestors suddenly interfered with Bai Qingyu's matter. Moreover, she personally appeared in front of Bai Qingyu." "Damn it, this sage doesn't know either." The golden-winged great Peng shouted. "This sage only received a message from Tsang Yutian, who knew that this was all arranged by our ancestor." The 5-colored seashell released its origin will. After taking a look, it smiled bitterly. Bai Qingyu has been eliminated by the human race. Bai Qing and the other 2 demon kings have also been captured by Daoist Xiao. Who should we ask? Where's Sage Ni? Feng Wu turned to look at the flying feather Ni Kong beast, whose figure flickered like a star in the night sky. Hee. The flying feather Ni Kong beast chuckled a bit awkwardly. This sage knows that Ni Quan wants to expand his power on the hidden immortal continent. He also reported that if this matter didn't involve the Immortal Palace, this sage wouldn't care at all. After all, they're suppressing a 5th-grade origin force human. As for Bai Qingyu and Sky Obscuring Ridge, they seem to be interrogating this human for 2 pieces of information. As for what information, Ni Quan doesn't know at all. Bai Qing and Peng Jun are tight-lipped. He can't get any information out of them at all. Information? What information? Wen Chu also looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. After all, the seven-colored seashell incident happened before the doppelgangers regained consciousness. Xiaohua didn't tell these doppelgangers at all. Daoist sorcerer nodded. No matter what information it is, since they're interrogating him, it must be what our ancestor wants. That's right. The five-colored sea god seashell was rather perplexed as well. That's why I'm curious. Why are you insisting on interrogating this grand ascension stage being? They don't seem to know each other. There's no way a human grand ascension stage cultivator would want to know something that our ancestor has to know. Furthermore, from the fact that Bai Qingyu has been suppressing that human great sage's substitute for several hundred years, it seems that our ancestor values this information greatly. She doesn't dare to use any extreme methods at all costs. Daoist sorcerer, the heavenly being, Wen Chu, and Feng Wu exchanged a glance. They were well aware that Xiaohua most likely had more secrets than all of the secrets in the three continents. It was very likely that he really did know what their ancestor wanted to know. That's good too. The flying feather void beast smiled. Since our ancestor values this information greatly, she won't harm that human grand ascension stage cultivator so easily. As long as the human grand ascension stage cultivator tells her the information, he'll be able to escape safely. The golden-winged great Peng nodded. Since our ancestor can't bear to harm that human grand ascension stage cultivator and only suppressed him for several hundred years. At this point, the golden-winged great Peng subconsciously paused. That's right. Since the old ancestor allowed Bai Qingyu to suppress the little white dragon for several hundred years, how long would she be able to suppress Xiaohua if he didn't speak up? Indeed, Sage Peng is right. Whoever started the trouble should end it. Wen Chu also waved a hand. Fellow immortals, surround the three great sages first. If fellow immortal Xiao doesn't come out, we'll wait here for another day. If fellow immortal Xiao doesn't come out for 10,000 years, we'll wait here for 10,000 years. Damn it, damn it. The golden-winged great Ping knew that he had said something wrong, and he roared, "Humans, I only respect your close relationship with Phoenix Sage of the demon race, and I don't want to cause any trouble. Don't think that I'm afraid of you." Without waiting for the golden-winged great Peng to finish speaking, rumble. The 36 scattered nascent souls formed hand seals in unison. Like the cries of 10,000 horses, thunder was born in the entire night sky, and similarly, it uniformly covered the space of 10,000 miles. Chapter 4390. Damn it. The flying feather void beast was very sensitive to spatial fluctuations, and he could already sense the order and solemnity of the lightning, and he couldn't help but curse. Why are these 36 grand ascension stage human beings acting like a single person? How did they do it? In that case, even an ordinary spell would be amplified by close to 100 times the power of 36 grand ascension stage beings at the same time. Even if I were to reach the pinnacle of power, I wouldn't be able to deal with them. It seemed that they were about to draw their swords again. Boom! Thousands of miles away, another seven-colored light flashed out from an unknown space like a rainbow. Xiaohua could sense that something had happened again upon seeing this burst of rainbow light, as well as an aura that he was no match for. He immediately activated his magic power and teleported away without any hesitation. Xiaohua heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the spatial light had already passed through the layers of space within a few breaths of time. However, before he could calm down, he saw that the distorted light and shadows were instantly covered by the seven-colored halo. Moreover, the space around Xiaohua had clearly sunk. Xiaohua was shocked. He hurriedly activated the lightning around him, and the power of his domain crazily expanded in all directions. His domain had only expanded by a few hundred miles when Xiaohua saw a seven-colored dome of heaven descend from the sky. At the same time, a vast seven-colored land also emerged from the ground, sealing him in a seven-colored space in an instant. However, the seven-colored space was unusually quiet. There was no chi of heaven and earth or great spirit. Only seven-colored light threads were floating leisurely all over the place. Xiaohua's spiritual sense couldn't extend very far, and as his gaze fell upon the threads of light, countless illusionary realms appeared, as if each of the threads of light was a small world of its own. Xiaohua's heart jolted upon seeing this, and lightning erupted all over his body as he flew toward a certain direction. Rumble! Lightning filled the entire sky. Xiaohua flew for a long while, but he was unable to see the edge of the rainbow light, and nothing around him had changed. Seeing this, Xiaohua simply stopped and waved his hand, wanting to take out the wishful staff. However, where Xiaohua's mind fell, there was no trace of anyone in the space behind his head. Hiss, how is this possible? Xiaohua was shocked, and he hurriedly checked his surroundings, but there was no trace of space at all. Is this an illusion? Xiaohua immediately thought of his encounter with the vast freedom heavenly devil in the ruins. Immediately afterward, Xiaohua hurriedly pulled out a yin-yang bracelet and scanned it with his spiritual sense. As expected, this yin-yang bracelet couldn't be opened either. Damn it. Xiaohua cursed as he put the yin-yang bracelet away, then pulled out the Tingjiao shears. Previously, he had used the Tingjiao shears to attack the golden rock, and didn't have time to put it away, but now he could use it. Shua! Xiaohua activated his magic power, and the soaring dragon scissors transformed into a dragon shape and swung in the air, immediately cutting the 7-colored light strands in half. Moreover, these light strands didn't instantly fuse, but instead slowly turned into 2 light strands and drifted down. Xiaohua frowned again and thought to himself, if this isn't an illusion, then this must be the location of a seal, but this seal is too powerful. No, it's not a seal, it should be a space similar to the 5-colored sea god shell. It's the rainbow seashell. In this space, it must have isolated my space. Damn it, if that's really the case, then this rainbow seashell is rainbow. Oh, I understand now. The cause and effect is actually here. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's thoughts suddenly became clear. He knew a lot, and what Wen Chu could think of, he could also think of. He even thought of Fairy Jing and the jade eyes he gave her. If that's the case, then this rainbow seashell is the backer that the 5-colored great demon of the Great Snow Mountain was talking about. It's a great sage among great sages that even Mahavairakana doesn't want to provoke. And he's the mastermind behind the suppression of Little White Dragon. As for the main culprit, it's the jade eyes I gave Fairy Jing. The rainbow seashell inside must have an extremely close relationship with this rainbow seashell, or else he wouldn't have been able to suppress Little White Dragon for 200 years. Poor Little White Dragon. Back then, I didn't know that Fairy Jing was so heartless. When she saw that she couldn't have a deep relationship with me, she immediately drank the emotion-forgetting water. I didn't have time to get the jade eyes back, so I've implicated Little White Dragon. However, this rainbow seashell can actually change the god's statue with a human body and a snake tail. It must be related to me, Shang Huaming. How can I just give it to someone else so casually? Of course, it's also possible that the rainbow conch and rainbow ocean shell are closely related to me. When he thought up to here, Xiaohua had a plan in his heart, and he stopped moving and looked around. There might be many cultivators like Xiaohua on the Dawn Rain continent and the 3 continents, but it was rare to see someone as affectionate as Xiaohua. Ever since Xiaohua recovered part of his memories and returned to the cultivation world from the Divine Land, he already knew that he was Zhang Xiaohua. However, he couldn't forget that Xiao Hongyue had adopted him and the care and concern of Gong Mingwei, Zhang Qingxiao, and Xiao Xinrui, so he never changed his name. He even changed his Dharma name to Daoist Xiao to commemorate the time between Xiao Hongyue and Yellow Flower Ridge. Now that he saw a senior who might be related to Shang Huaming, how could Xiaohua not be serious? After Xiaohua looked around and saw no trace of him, he bowed and said, Shang Huaming's junior disciple greets senior? The 7-colored light that filled the sky instantly froze. In the distant horizon, a 7-colored full moon suddenly appeared, illuminating the entire space. However, there was no difference whether it shone brightly or not. Near Xiaohua, there was nothing but emptiness and 7 colors, nothing else. The 7-colored full moon appeared in front of Xiaohua in a flash. When the brilliance faded, a beautiful woman appeared from the full moon. The woman was completely naked, and her skin was also seven-colored. The seven colors flowed slowly on the mysterious lines of the woman. Other than an indescribable feeling, there was only holiness left. Two extreme feelings appeared on her body at the same time. If any human saw this, they would be dumbfounded. They would be drowned in her beauty and suffocate. "You are Shang Huaming's disciple?" The woman's voice was like the sound of nature, and seemed to be more attractive than her beauty. What does Shang Huaming look like now? Although Xiao Hua was respectful, he did not relax. He was still on guard. When he bowed, he had already seen the woman's physical appearance. However, he also understood that this woman was a demon. The so-called human form was just a piece of clothing in her eyes. In the eyes of the human race, etiquette, justice, integrity, and shame were the accessories on the clothes. This woman might like the beauty of the clothes, but how would she know if the accessories were good, pleasing to the eye, or even in accordance with the rules? Since the woman did not care about her physical appearance, Xiao Hua naturally could not take it to heart. Appearance was emptiness, and emptiness was appearance. Xiao Hua was not unaware of this. Hearing the woman ask about Shang Huaming, he hurriedly replied, "Senior, please no. This junior does not know if the Shang Huaming you speak of is the same as the Shang Huaming I speak of. However, this junior does not know much about Shang Huaming's current situation." The Shang Huaming I know is naturally not the Shang Huaming you know." The woman sighed. Her gaze seemed to be able to see through space. She said, "How many years has it been? How could there not be any changes?" "Yes, this junior understands." Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and he hurriedly replied, "Since you know Shang Huaming, you should know my intentions, right?" The woman went straight to the point. Xiao Hua nodded and said, "This junior roughly understands what senior is thinking, but I wonder if it is related to the jade eyes?" Hearing Xiao Hua mention the jade eyes, the woman's figure could not help but tremble. Her seven-colored body dissipated like an illusion, and a few breaths later, it reappeared. The seven colors of the entire seven-colored space vibrated at the same time. Clearly, the woman was very excited, and this excitement could not be suppressed. The woman nodded. Her seven-colored eyes, which were like the deep sea, were suffused with incomparable splendor. She opened her mouth and said, "The 200 years of farce can finally end today. Are you the real Xiao Hua?" "This junior." Xiao Hua admitted, "It was this junior who gave the jade eyes to Fairy Jing." The woman still nodded. Since she knew that Xiao Hua was already in the space, the woman's expression calmed down. After a while, she asked, "The image in the jade eyes, where did you see it?" "Senior, are you talking about the seven-colored conch?" Xiao Hua saw that the woman did not point it out. It seemed that she still did not trust him, so he simply explained the matter. "Yes." The woman's voice clearly trembled again. Clearly, she was extremely concerned about the seven-colored conch. She did not hide this concern, and she was not even afraid of Xiao Hua seeing through it. Xiao Hua, of course, would not directly admit that the seven-colored conch was in his hands. He slightly smiled and said, "If Senior has any questions, this junior will definitely answer them. However, if possible, can Senior first tell me about the relationship between Senior and the seven-colored conch?" The woman's tone was cold, and she indifferently replied, "Little guy, some things can be heard, and some things can't be heard." "Senior is right." Xiao Hua did not show any weakness and replied, "Some people can be trusted, and some people can't be trusted. This junior cannot casually leak the information about Senior Hua Ming to others." Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish speaking, the seven-colored silk covering the skies suddenly went crazy. The space within 100 li around Xiao Hua suddenly contracted, and then all the seven-colored silk condensed into a tentacle-like thing that passed through the space and fell between Xiao Hua's eyebrows. Gotcha! The domain around Xiao Hua collapsed under the tentacle, and the seven-colored silk fiercely pounced over like a python. Chapter 4391. Rumble. Xiao Hua didn't hold back. Green seal text appeared between his eyebrows. Lightning flashed and thunder rolled, protecting his body. The seven-colored light cracked under the lightning attack, unable to get within 100 miles of Xiaohua. Damn it! The woman's voice sounded. The entire sky immediately darkened, as if a storm was about to come. On the other hand, Xiaohua's expression didn't change. As he circulated his magic power, spiraling petals appeared between the lightning bolts. Wherever these petals passed, the collapsed space rapidly healed. It was only as he spoke that the space that had been destroyed by the woman was restored. Senior. Xiaohua's voice sounded. On the 3 continents, the highest level of strength is the upper 9th level of origin energy. Since Senior's sealed space is on the 3 continents, it can't exceed this law. Moreover, the information about the 7-colored conch is probably only known by Junior in the entire world. Senior, please reconsider. Are you threatening me? The woman's voice was very sharp. Clearly, she was already somewhat angry. Then, Xiaohua saw that several hundred li away from him, a 7-colored brilliance flashed. Then, 2 figures appeared in the brilliance. The woman coldly said, "Unfortunately, you don't have the qualifications to threaten me." Little White? Seeing the human figure that looked exactly like him in the light, Xiaohua finally understood. Little White Dragon was sucked into the space by this woman. No wonder he couldn't detect it. However, looking at the beautiful woman beside Little White Dragon, whose belly was slightly bulging, Xiaohua was confused. "Do you see? This is your substitute. He was suppressed under the fire pillar for you for more than 200 years. Although I don't know what your relationship with him is, seeing that not only do you look similar to him, even your aura and soul are similar, don't tell me that you don't know him." The woman coldly laughed and said. Xiaohua didn't deny it. He nodded and said, "He's called Little White. He's a python that transformed into a dragon. He's Junior's brother in tribulation. Junior can't not recognize him." "That's right," the woman said with a smile. "Since you're his brother in tribulation, you should know why I took him out." Xiaohua faintly smiled and said, "If it were someone else who said this Junior would probably compromise and lower his head for Little White's life. But when facing Senior, Junior doesn't think it's a good idea for Senior to threaten Junior with Xiaobai's life." But the young woman was surprised. Since Xiaohua was willing to lead 200,000 Fortune Gate disciples to rescue the Little White Dragon, it was natural that he attached great importance to the Little White Dragon. Moreover, just a moment ago, Xiaohua had already admitted that the Little White Dragon in his hand was his brother in tribulation. How could he possibly disregard the Little White Dragon's life? "It's simple," Xiaohua replied. "This Junior's brother has an extremely good relationship with my Shanghuaming Senior. It can be said that they have gone through life and death together. If Senior injures this Junior's brother, Junior doesn't know how Senior will explain it to Senior from Shanghuaming." Damn it! When the woman heard this, she couldn't help but fly into a rage. Light flashed, and the 2 figures within the light woke up. "Darling Xiao, darling Xiao." The woman opened her eyes and looked around blankly. She exclaimed, Where is this?" "Your grandmother, how would I know where this is?" The Little White Dragon also looked around and cursed, "Wasn't this all arranged by you? How come you didn't know? This concubine was afraid that you would be killed by my father. That's why I saved you." The woman was naturally Bai Bo. She pulled the Little White Dragon's hand, and a demonic cloud appeared below her. She flew in a certain direction. The Little White Dragon seemed to be injured, so he didn't circulate his dragon chi and only flew with Bai Bo. Unfortunately, Bai Bo flew straight for a while, but her figure didn't change at all. Her voice sounded again, "That's not right. This doesn't seem to be me by Qingyu." "What an idiot!" the Little White Dragon scolded. He struggled to move his body and looked around. His eyes were filled with illusions, so how could he distinguish the direction? He only casually pointed, and the 2 of them flew again. After flying for a while, the Little White Dragon asked, "You said that there are already many human cultivators around by Qingyu who came to save me?" "That's right, darling Xiao." Bai Bo nodded and said, "Bai Qingyu's front sent a message that there are several groups of cultivators coming to save you. However, their strength is too weak. At most, they are at the lower 5th grade essence force. They can't even compare to my demon general, so how could they save you? Your grandmother, your father is so heartless. The little white dragon said fiercely, he's using me as bait. That's right. Bai Bo looked like a little bird that was dependent on a man. She said in a low voice, that day, I heard my father discussing with the Demon King of Shrouding Sky Ridge and the Demon King of Ancient Bell Mountain to kill you today to show his might. I was scared, so I mustered up my courage to steal you out. You didn't dare to make a move for more than 100 years. For no reason, why did you have the guts today? The little white dragon pinched Bai Bo's chest and said with a pout, weren't you in no danger in the past? Bai Bo laughed delicately and said, don't think I don't know your tricks. When you were refining that fire pillar, although you shouted fiercely, you were actually using that demon fire to cultivate. Although it was painful, it was useful for your cultivation. The little white dragon snorted in annoyance. Bai Bo panicked and said hurriedly, Darling Xiao, I never told my father about this. None of them knew. Little white dragon answered casually, and Jade Wave's face immediately turned for the better. She looked around and said, moreover, this concubine wants you to know that this concubine is devoted to you. Unlike that slut who betrayed you and even tricked you. Pa! Without waiting for Bai Bo to finish speaking, the little white dragon slapped Bai Bo's face and scolded, you're not allowed to slander others. How many times have I told you, I don't know her at all? If you don't know her, how could she possibly give up her life to save you? Although Bai Bo felt wronged, her small mouth flattened. In the end, she still didn't cry and said stubbornly, I want you to see that I can also sacrifice everything for you. For you, I can also. All right, no need to say any more. The little white dragon touched Bai Bo's face lovingly and said, that woman and I don't know each other at all. The one she knows is the human race's Xiao Hua. Oh, are you still in pain? It doesn't hurt anymore. Bai Bo put her face on the little white dragon's hand and said in a low voice, that day, other than being jealous, I was also shocked. I didn't think that loving someone could actually love to that extent. So when I heard that you were in danger, I really couldn't help it. Besides, I can't let our child be born without a father, right? Ah? The little white dragon almost jumped up when he heard that. He cried out in surprise, what? Our child? Where is it? Where is it? Bai Bo stroked her stomach loftily and said with a smile, naturally it's in my stomach. Speaking up to here, Bai Bo glanced at the little white dragon and said coquettishly, you still have the cheek to say that. My servant girl also has your flesh and blood. If not for the sake of that flesh and blood, I would have killed her long ago. Damn it, is that true? The little white dragon looked at Bai Bo in disbelief and then carefully placed his hand on her stomach, touching it again and again. After a while, the little white dragon opened his mouth again and said, wife, there seems to be a mountain peak in front. Why don't you hide there first? But when Bai Bo heard that the little white dragon was concerned about her, she was overjoyed and hurriedly agreed. However, she had just said one word when she came back to her senses and said anxiously, Darling Xiao, I'm going. You, what are you going to do? Could it be that you're going to find that slut? Oh, don't worry. I've already made arrangements for her. After this period of time, I'll let her leave by Qingyu. Wife. The little white dragon reached out to touch Bai Bo's slightly bulging stomach and said word by word, your husband is a man. Previously, I didn't know that there were human cultivators coming to save your husband, so your husband escaped far away. But now, your husband knows that they came to save your husband. How can your husband stay out of it? Your husband must return to Bai Qingyu and tell them that your husband has already escaped danger. I even have to tell them that your husband isn't the Xiao Hua they want to save. And maybe the real Xiao Hua is also among them. How can your husband let Xiao Hua go to his death? But Bai Bo grabbed the little white dragon's hand and cried, Darling Xiao, if you go back, you definitely won't be able to return alive. I know. The little white dragon used his other hand to pat Bai Bo's cheek and said lovingly, But your husband is a man. A man should face life and death directly. He must not be a coward. Wife also doesn't wish for our flesh and blood to talk about today's matter after descending to the world. Tell him that your husband became a deserter, right? Let a group of human cultivators sacrifice themselves for your husband, right? Your wife would rather not tell him than tell him your heroic story on the day of your death. Bai Boden let go of the little white dragon's arm and said with gritted teeth, "Your wife only wants to see you every day, regardless of whether you are a man or not." Your grandmother, why can't you make sense? The little white dragon said exasperatedly, Laozi doesn't only have you as a woman. Laozi is from the dragon race. Human race, demon race, sea race, and so on, there are plenty of women, no matter how many you have. The little white dragon was wrong. Bai Bo was from the demon race, not the human race. Why would she care about this? Bai Bo shouted, I want you all. I won't let you go back. Boom. Just as Bai Bo was shouting, several soul strands came out from the little white dragon's glabella and landed on Bai Bo's forehead. Bai Bo closed her eyes and fainted. The little white dragon kissed Bai Bo's cheek tenderly and flew with her for a moment. Looking at his actions, it seemed like he hid her in the cave and then flew out himself. Of course, just as the little white dragon flew out, an illusion flashed in front of his eyes and he also lay down in the light. Chapter 4392. Xiaohua was slightly shocked to see the 5th and 6th grade elemental energy dragons and shell elemental energy being toyed with by the woman. He looked at the woman. That woman said indifferently, Do you see? If you don't agree, this brother of yours will die because of you. Do you want everyone who loves and cares about you to leave you one by one? Who is that woman? Xiaohua's eyes flashed with a sharp light. His eyes were already turning red as he looked at that woman and asked coldly. Actually, you already know in your heart. Why are you still asking me? That woman smiled coldly. Xiaohua naturally had a premonition that the woman the little white dragon was talking about should be Fairy Jing. Now that he heard the woman's confirmation, his heart couldn't help but ache. He really didn't expect that the snobbish woman in his heart would die to save him. Could it be that she didn't only have herself in her heart? Could it be that she wasn't as selfish as he thought? Does your heart ache? The woman asked indifferently. If you don't want your heart to ache, it's better to say what you know. If you say it, no one will get hurt because of you. If this junior says it, this junior's brother might not be in danger, but my Shang Huaming's senior might die because of this. Xiao Hua still shook his head and said, Moreover, this junior will definitely not let that woman die for no reason. The woman was furious again. You really think I don't dare to do it? Moreover, you massacred my Bai Qingyu, killed nearly 1 million of my demons, and ruined many of my children? Could it be that this isn't worth that woman of yours? That's right. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and said, Suppress my body and kill my old friend. I will definitely kill Bai Qingyu, demon monarch Bai Qingyu. Damn it. The woman was infuriated. Bai Qingyu has already been killed by you, yet you are still so arrogant. Alright, I will kill this little evil dragon right now. Seeing that the woman was really going to kill the little white dragon, Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment. Holding back the grief in his heart, he clenched his teeth and said, Killing Bai Qingyu and revealing the location of the rainbow conch are two different things now. I've made it clear that the rainbow conch seems to be closely related to me, Shang Huaming. If I'm not mistaken, he should be my senior. Therefore, I can't leave his life in the hands of others, and I can't tell anyone about him. I understand. At this moment, the woman also understood. Seeing Xiao Hua take half a step back, she nodded and said, You're right, this matter definitely cannot be known by outsiders. However, I'm not an outsider. If possible, this junior is all ears. Xiao Hua's face sank as he asked faintly, Actually, this junior has also heard it. Senior doesn't seem to know about Shang Huaming's. Not bad. The woman didn't conceal anything and replied, I've never heard of Shang Huaming in the 3 continents. I don't even know how he's related to Shang Huaming. Yes, Shang Huaming is such a small place. If not for someone close to him, no one would know about him. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and didn't point out where Shang Huaming was. The woman was silent for a moment before speaking again. Do you know the Red Sea domain? Speaking of the Red Sea domain, the woman's tone fluctuated again, as if she was wiping away a long time ago. Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. However, after thinking for a moment, he shook his head and said, "This junior has just stepped into the Thousand Demons' sacred realm and came to buy Qingyu. I'm not familiar with the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, so I don't know about the Red Sea domain." "Hehe, the Red Sea domain isn't a place in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm." "The realm?" The woman smiled and explained. Hearing the woman's words, Xiaohua was shocked again. He originally thought that the woman would talk about the 10,000 Demons realm. Who knew that the Red Sea domain would appear? Xiaohua replied cautiously again, "Forgive this junior for being ignorant. This junior only knows about the 3 continents and the 10,000 Demons realm. I don't know about the Red Sea domain." "Well, it's normal that you don't know about it." The woman's tone was filled with vicissitudes. Her indescribably beautiful face was filled with worry. "In the 3 continents, I'm afraid that other than me, and that rainbow conch you saw earlier, no one else knows about that place. What a beautiful place it is. The entire realm is filled with serene blue seawater. Every day, the Red Sea domain rises from the seawater, and every night, there are endless stars that appear. The stars seem to be embedded in the seawater, and every one of them emits bright starlight. Under the starlight, countless members of the shell race are either cultivating, playing the zither, singing, or talking about love. The Red Sea domain is like the eyes of the sea god. Every day, it hangs in the seawater, watering the growth of the shell race with gentle love. There's no fighting, no killing, no competitiveness. Every ray of sunlight is filled with lazy longing, and every strand of seawater is filled with longing. Only when the Red Sea domain descends south, that broken halo will melancholy rise in the hearts of the shell race." At this point, when the woman heard this, tears appeared in her eyes. They were crystal clear, and rolled down her face that could be broken with a flick of a finger. There was actually a 7-colored rainbow, and it was truly charming. The woman's eyes slowly transformed. One was like a rainbow, and the other was like a star. It took the time it took to drink a cup of tea. Xiaohua didn't dare to disturb her, and only stood there quietly. "My name is Bei Xian." When the woman's eyes reappeared, Xiaohua heard her speak in an exceptionally clear voice. "It's from the Red Sea region. My true body, I believe you've heard of it and guessed that it is the Rainbow Sea God Shell. The one you saw earlier is my lover, the Rainbow Sea God Shell. His name is Bei Ming." See. Although Xiaohua had heard the woman's words before, and his heart was somewhat prepared, when the woman named Bei Xian, personally admitted that she was the Rainbow Sea God Shell's lover, Xiaohua couldn't help but take a deep breath. In his mind, he couldn't help but call out the equally beautiful and noble appearance of the 10,000 Demon Realms Empress Xian Wan. Bei Xian didn't pay attention to Xiaohua's strange state and continued, "Unfortunately, even 1,000,000 years of happiness is short-lived. Once the calamity comes, everything can only turn into memories." The human race of the hidden immortal continent had written many stories, and many of them were the same as what happened in the Red Sea domain. Experts from other realms attacked and broke the peace of the Red Sea domain. The Red Sea god of the Red Sea domain led the shell race to protect their homeland with their lives, and fought against the invaders. But the invaders of the sea race were too powerful. The shell race's shells were tough, and their bodies were weak and delicate. They were no match for the sea race. In just 1,000 years, the Red Sea domain turned into a blood domain. Everywhere was filled with blood and savagery. When Bei Ming and I were fighting against the sea race, we suddenly encountered a spatial fissure, and luckily escaped from the massacre of the sea race. But in the turbulent flow of space, I was separated from him again. I relied on the hardness of my shell to avoid being killed by the spatial fissure, and drifted to the 3 continents, but I don't know where he went. From then on, he turned into a mark, and only existed in my memory. Although I knew that this was a strange realm, I always hoped that he could wander there like me. So I left behind an order for my descendants. As long as there was a 7-colored brilliance, whether it was the human race, the sea race, the monster race, or the spirit race, they had to report it to me immediately. But over the years, I was disappointed again and again, and in the end, I was on the verge of despair. Until about 200 years ago, a jade eyes appeared in front of me by chance. At this point, Bei Xian raised her head to look at Xiaohua and asked, "I've said enough, whether you believe me or not. Anyway, I won't kill you. His information is too important, so important that I don't dare to let go of any opportunity. As for your substitute, I'd rather suppress him until he's old than search his soul, unless it's the moment of his death." Of course, if you don't say anything, I definitely won't let you go. Bei Xian's tone was so resolute, more eternal than the stars in the sky. Xiaohua was very moved. What was the difference between this kind of stubbornness and Shue's loneliness in the dark side of space? What was the difference between this and the stone statue's protection, or even longer? Xiaohua really couldn't find any reason to refuse this pitiful Bei Xian. Even if Bei Xian's actions really hurt him, Xiaohua even felt that if Xian Yan and Bei Xian appeared in front of him at the same time, he would very likely give Bei Ming to Bei Xian. Of course, fortunately, this kind of situation didn't happen. Moreover, Xiaohua couldn't be sure that Bei Ming was the Minghua that Xian Yan spoke of. Although the two legendary existences both had the word Ming in their names. Xiaohua sighed, "Senior's deep yearning, this junior can empathize with it. This junior also has a loved one, but we can't meet. This junior is willing to tell senior where I saw this senior." "Ok." Bei Xian's voice trembled. Where is he?" Before saying this junior has a small request. After all, this involved the life and death of the rainbow conch. Xiaohua was just too careless. He still wanted to verify the truth of Bei Xian's words. Bei Xian clearly misunderstood Xiaohua's meaning. She said with some displeasure, "Human, don't worry. As long as you tell me where Bei Ming is, I can give you anything you want in the Thousand Beasts sacred realm. I can even help you cultivate to the highest realm in the 3 continents." "Senior misunderstands," Xiaohua said with a smile. "This matter involves Senior Bei Ming's life and death. This junior doesn't dare to be careless. If Senior can show me the image of the sea god, perhaps this junior will be more at ease." "How dare you!" Bei Xian lightly reprimanded, causing the entire rainbow space to shake. "The image of the sea god is actually that of a mortal like you." At this point, Bei Xian stopped. She seemed to think for a moment and nodded. "I understand what you mean." With that, Bei Xian didn't seem to do anything. The rainbow light in front of Xiaohua boiled violently like flames soaring into the sky. The image of the sea god proudly flew out from the flames. The upper body of this image was that of a woman, with a thin waist and full breasts. Her 2 hands were placed in front of her chest, and her 10 fingers formed a seal. As for the lower body, from the waist down, it wasn't the legs of an ordinary person, but a snake tail. Wasn't it exactly the same as Shang Huaming's god statue? You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.